Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no coal. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studio in Huntsville, Alabama. The local stagehands union has a new contract. The local Ironworkers union is hustling. The Biden administration makes some important changes for trade workers, but he doesn't have a make gas expensive button. We'll be talking about the real Republican agenda on taxation and more on today's Valley Labor Report. If you want to be part of the program, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can call 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. And you can leave a voicemail throughout the week and we might answer it on the next show. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us online. We're anywhere you can find anything online, all at the Valley Labor Report. All of our shows are streamed live on Facebook and YouTube. We upload everything as a podcast, and we clip all of the segments of the show and upload it as its own individual videos on our YouTube channel. Right? So like, okay, look, maybe you're not interested in the local stagehands' new contract, but you're interested in seeing that the Republicans in D.C. are literally trying to raise taxes on poor folks. Maybe you're more interested in that. Well, you can just watch that video on our YouTube channel. So that's always an option, right? So go make sure you're following us everywhere online. That is all everywhere. It's the Valley Labor Report. We've also got a website, TVLR.fm. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So that's no joke when we say that listener funding is very important to keeping us on the radio. If you want to become a sustaining member of the program, if you want to make a one-time donation or buy our new hat, throw that up for them to see on the stream, Adam, you can go to TVLR.fm. Go to our online store and you can make a donation. You can become a sustaining member. You can buy a hat, all at TVLR.fm, or you can make a monthly donation on Patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. If you're a member of a union, you should get your local to sponsor the show. We've got several local unions that sponsor the show, and of course, their support of the show is instrumental in keeping us on the air as well. So you can reach out to me for more details on that. Let's get this one out of the way before we bring Bob on. Bob is vice president of the Stagehands Union here in Huntsville. He's going to be talking to us here in a second about their new contract. But let's get this story out of the way because it's pretty funny. Adam is going to be really happy to hear that I believe that the state of public education in Alabama may be a bit safer than we had first imagined, because the Dale Jackson last week revealed what he believed to be the best argument for school privatization.
I can't wait.
Okay. So I have told Adam not to read this story that I linked in our show notes, and I did that on the honor system.
I did not read it.
He did not read it.
You.
And that's And, maybe it's just because he's lazy and he doesn't do any prep work.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Those notes were checked before 9:30, though.
There you
not
go.
That link.
There you go. So, what is Dale Jackson's best argument for school privatization, right? And you should, school privatization, that's a big, this is a big deal, right? You should have a good argument if you're going to privatize education in this country. If you're going to advocate that, we send public dollars to private hands, like, you should have a good argument, right? So
You would think.
You would think. So here's what. Sometimes kids are weird.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
That's the whole thing.
Oh.
That's the whole thing, is that sometimes
breaking news.
Sometimes kids are weird, so you should be able to funnel public dollars into your friends' pockets. That's the thing. A Meade County school district in Kentucky is dealing with an unusual situation. A group of high school students is attending school acting like and dressing like cats.
Really?
Yeah. And so Dale said that this is the best argument for school privatization that he can think of. So yeah, that's the whole thing, is that there's some kids that are coming to school with like cat ears.
Oh.
And so yeah.
Seems like a pressing emergency. If that is the single best argument for privatization,
yeah,
yes,
I mean, I feel good.
I feel
good.
much better about our chances. I think we'll be able to defend education for all kids if that's what we're up against.
Yeah.
Even the weird kids,
Even
the cat-eared kids. You know what? They need reading and writing and arithmetic.
Oh man, but now you haven't heard all of it. It does make it so. There's this grandmother who was quoted in the article.
Is this real news? Or is this like some fake news?
No, I'm talking. This is real news.
Okay.
This is out of WLKY in Kentucky.
Okay.
Out of Louisville, Kentucky. This is a local news station. There's a Meade County school district that literally there was an article written about. There are some students dressing like cats. And this made the news. Yes, slow news day. But there was like a petition for the school district to do something about it. And a grandmother was quoted saying, quote, "The students are told they can't wear hats or Budweiser shirts in school." So this is serious. But they can wear cat ears, cat tails, and leashes. It doesn't make sense.
Well, alrighty then. Okay. Not much happening up there if that's the biggest community issue you have. If you're out there beating the pavement to get some signatures on that petition.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm going to guess that's primarily a Facebook outrage kind of scenario.
Yeah, of course. Now, when I called him on this, on Twitter, I was like, oh, well, I said basically what I'm saying now, that, oh, well, maybe public education is safe if this is the best.
Right.
And he was like, this is obviously hyperbole. Jake, is obviously hyperbole. And
as is like 99% of what they say.
Right, of course. They make these, and look, I don't doubt that he doesn't actually think that this is the best argument, but I'm sure he does think that this is an argument. And on it, like, none of the other, just for the record, we did a big breakdown on school privatization a couple of weeks ago. You can find that on our YouTube channel, where Adam talked about it, and we talked about some of the stats, and it really was amazing. The more that I dug into it, how bad it is in other states that have implemented these school voucher programs. Because in other states that have implemented these school voucher programs, the students that make use of the vouchers don't even see increased test scores. Like, that's how bad it doesn't even. The argument, right, for school privatization is that, oh, well, maybe it's going to doom an entire community to terrible education for decades, but at least a couple of individual families will have better education for it. But that, according to these studies and according to most of the literature, that claim is even dubious. that the people who go to these charter schools where there are CEOs raking in public dollars, even those students that take advantage of that, they don't get any benefit from it, right? So the obvious, if you're actually concerned with increasing, making education better in Alabama, it's going to be making public education better, not privatizing the school district. But on a serious note, though, on this specific argument about, sometimes kids are weird, so I should be able to take public dollars to put my student in a private school. That is similar to privatization arguments that have been put out in the past, right?
Segregation
exactly
is intertwined into the entire school privatization movement and arguments.
Exactly.
By race, by class, by gender, by
right.
religion. So it does speak to that, cultural phenomena that the privatizers prey on.
Yeah. That's a lot of the first charter schools and private schools in the South were literally segregation academies, right? Like everybody was on board with public education, and then black folks were able to attend public schools, and so literally all across the South, all of these private schools were chartered so that white students wouldn't have to go to school with black folks, so that people could segregate their students, their special snowflake students, from the poors and the untouchables and the weird kids, right? And so so of course this isn't like as serious as segregation, but there is like a kernel of like, there's historical precedence here. Like, I don't want my kids associating with the normal people. I want my kids associating with other special people that are more like me, economically and socially and racially and all this stuff.
Yeah. Also, this is definitely a less serious part of it, but it's as if private schools don't have weird kids. Because last I checked, there's plenty of weird kids in private schools too. Adolescence is a weird time in human beings' development. They're going to be weird. They're going to be strange. Mm-hmm. They're going to do things that you don't like or that make you uncomfortable as a grown-up. That's part of the human experience. And no amount of funneling public dollars into your private pockets is going to fix that, just going to change that. If anything, it'll make it worse.
Exactly. So have we got Bob on the line?
We do have Bob. Bob is
line. All right.
On his way in the Zoom here.
Okay. Well, so the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technicians, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States, its territories, and Canada, IATSI, was founded in 1893 and today represents more than 150,000 working people in virtually all arts, media, and entertainment crafts. Bob McManus is the vice president for IATSI Local 900 and vice president for the North Alabama Labor Council here in Huntsville. Bob, thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. I want to thank you and Adam for having me on the show. I always say the biggest benefit of a union offers workers is a voice, and you guys are certainly amplifying ours right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're really happy to have you on. Been wanting to do it for a while, and your new contract is a good reason to have you on. Before we get into that though, can you talk to us about your your background, like how long you've been in IATSI, what got you involved, why is it such like a big part of your life?
Well, for us, our union is almost like a guild. We get all our work through the union, and we rely on the union to train people and to forward our crafts. So it becomes a part of your life immediately when you become a stagehand, and it all the benefits that the union offers. It's just for me. It's always been, I guess, what you might call the fun part of work. I got involved in unions very early. When I was in college, I studied business at the Citadel, and I became familiar with unions then, and just kind of got involved in the cause, and just really jumped on board when I became a stagehand. It's a great way of life. We strive off the things that the union offers us, and it's just a great way of life. You guys are all, I'm sure, aware of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's part of why we're glad you're on the show this morning, just to share your testimony, because I think that's always important to hear from folks who've been involved in unions about, what motivated them and how the union has helped their life and benefited their family.
For me, in college, I was in a very conservative business environment, our business school, and most of us were developing negative attitudes towards unions based on, the things that our instructors were teaching us. But I had the good fortune.
So wait,
of
you didn't have like crazy liberal Marxist professors in college?
Just one.
There's always at least one. I mean, that's fine.
It only takes one, right? We did have one professor who allowed us to speak, and but for me, I met an old lady one night who had a really bad scar on her shoulder, which matches one of mine. I broke my collarbone one time. It was very painful. And I asked her how it happened, and she told me a story that just blew my mind. She was working in a mill in South Carolina, and union organizers came down, and she went out and met with a few of the union organizers, and basically got accosted by the Pinkertons and beat up and left for dead. And she changed my attitude about unions that night. And it's, I've been pushing for that cause ever since. I mean, when she described the way the Pinkertons were handling the union in the 40s, I just never got over that. You know what I mean? I knew what side I was on, clearly.
Absolutely.
So, the opportunity that IATSI gave me was the opportunity to take that, the passion that developed that day and go forward with it. And we always take every opportunity we get to spread good news. And really, that's why I'm on the show today. We are having success here in Huntsville, and we are proving to the city and our other employers, how valuable the unions can be.
Yeah, well, let's shift to the to the local situation here with the stagehands. Y'all have like about 100 members around here, right?
And we're getting close to that. As soon as we get Adam and a few others on board, we will be at 100. We got a membership drive that's coming up, because like a lot of locals, we're having a labor shortage. The pandemic left us completely out of work for over a year and a half, because we just couldn't have events in an environment like that. But we're coming back really strong. We have several new contracts, which we're just absolutely thrilled with. Most importantly, with the Von Braun Center, which has been our primary employer since around 1976. But really, for the first time that I'm aware of, a city entity has recognized the value and effectiveness of the union model. We also got, we went to visit this week, and we're signing a new contract with the Orion Amphitheater, which is a beautiful new facility. We've been over there touring twice, and we're getting ramped up for shows. They're going to have an amazing schedule starting this summer.
Oh yeah,
and
fantastic.
we're also getting calls from Toyota Field. So we went from having no work at all during the pandemic and to where we are now, which is just total, shortage of labor on hand.
Right. Yeah, well, talk the way that y'all, so the way that y'all operate is more like a trade union than a lot of folks are, like most folks are used to, they have one employer and they go every day, and can you talk to us about like how your jobs are kind of allocated and your contractors, and how do stagehand union members in Huntsville get work?
Okay, yeah, that's it is a unique model. It's called a referral hall, and the IATSI runs a referral hall here in Huntsville. Some people refer to it as a hiring hall, but basically, this is a right to work state, so union members and non-union members all go into the same pool. And when we get requests for labor, we choose, the individuals on that list who have the most experience or who are the best suited for the job. And then that's how job assignments are made. So, for example, this afternoon, I'm doing a show for Graham Nash at the Mars Music Hall. They needed a small crew, a steward, and 4 hands to get a small band in there. And so we go to the list and we look at the best available, and we assign them to those positions, and then the list rotates. So so that each member and each referral gets positions as they become available.
Right,
so,
right.
And Adam's come to work for us here recently a little bit, and he's looking at it from one end, and I'm looking at it from the other. He may have a perspective of what it's like to be a stagehand at his level too. It's hard work sometimes, but it's also.
Yeah,
well,
talk to us about the actual the work that you do. Like people a lot of times, they go to shows, and I don't think that they really appreciate how much work actually goes into putting these things together and how dangerous it can actually be. Talk to us about some of the work that y'all are doing and going to be doing at the VBC and the Orion Amphitheater and Toyota Field and stuff like that.
Okay, well, we have different departments. All of our, for example, our union is what's called a mixed local. We have all the skill sets covered under one local. On an average show, for example, Adam is pushing cases in, and I'm what I do. I'm a rigger. I take the all that heavy equipment, the lights, the sound, and everything, and we hang it from the ceiling. And by that, I mean, we physically climb up into the ceiling, we lower a rope down, and we pull chains up, and we hang all that equipment. Most of your listeners probably are aware of the halftime show at the Super Bowl. It took 600 stagehands. It took 600 people working behind the scenes to get that show in and get it on and get it back out the door, all during beer commercials. So, it was,
It's
so
amazing.
that's a good example of what we do. Locally, what we do basically is we bring them in the morning, 6 trucks roll in for the average show. We unload those 6 trucks. We put all that stuff, we hang it from the ceiling, 60, 80,000 pounds worth of lights, trusses, speakers, that kind of thing. And then we have a show, and if it's Elton John, it's really big. If it's Reba, it's absolutely huge. But if it's Graham Nash, it's me and 4 other guys, and a couple of gals, and we get it in and we get it out in the same amount of time. So how dangerous can it be? Well, it can be extremely dangerous. There's a lot of heavy equipment moving all the time. There's forklifts driving around. There's guys like me up in the ceiling who are scared to death of dropping something. But the show must go on, and it almost always does.
Right. Well, we had David is in the chat, and he asked, to speak about the quality of the performances and how IATSI labor affects that, because and you mentioned that the city and the VBC and all these people are kind of starting to realize the value that having the good union labor on these performances, the value that y'all provide. Just can you talk to us about why why they're seeing that value and how your work does affect the quality of shows? David said that he's never been to a bad performance at the VBC ever. And that's because of course, because of the performing artists, but because of all the prep work that y'all do too.
Oh, absolutely. It all comes down to training. It comes down to enjoying the work that you're doing. One of the things that the union is very good at is recognizing skills in individuals and promoting those skills, which is what makes us so effective. Rather than, finding a job somewhere and adapting yourself to that job, we kind of get behind people and push. And it's a model that works very well with creative people. We don't ask people to do things they don't like to do. If you're not comfortable in the back of a truck, well, we're not going to leave you in the back of the truck. We'll find something else for you to do. Right. The reason why unions are more effective, quite simply, at what we do is because of the way we train our people and the way we promote their best interest at all times. And so if I'm not scared of heights and, I like being up in the ceiling, well, that's where I'm going to be. We call, everybody has what they call their happy place. And that's, we refer to it as such. And if everybody's standing in their happy place, then the show is going to be much better than if, So to answer David's question, it's quite simply, it's the way we train our people and it's the way we promote their interests.
Yeah, and I can testify to that too, having started working there a little bit and still very green, but I got to say the team environment that is there makes such a difference. Everybody's looking out for each other. If you're still learning things, folks are great to show you the ropes, literally and figuratively, and I think that makes such a huge difference. And I got to say how much I enjoy doing the work. And you're right, Jacob. The amount of labor that goes into these performances, whether it's rock bands or the Broadway Theater League shows that you hear about, or even just some of the expos that happen down at the VBC, it's amazing. It is amazing to see truckloads of crates become an elaborate set. It's amazing to see what our workers can do, and I think it's a different style of workplace. The all in as a team model, and I got to say I really enjoy it. So for folks out there, and I'm sure y'all are going to get to this, but if there's folks locally who are interested in picking up some work, check it out. I enjoy it a lot. It can be physically demanding. I know I've been sore in places. I haven't been sore in a long time, but it's so cool to see the start to finish. It's an amazing experience. So, can only echo Bob's comments there.
Yeah, and talk to us about the new contract. You've got this new contract with the VBC, and you're working on, sounds like, a contract with Toyota Field and Orion. And you said that you've been able to get this new contract because they are beginning to kind of recognize the value that y'all bring to the table. What is in this new contract that's better than the one you had before? And talk to us about that.
Okay, well, basically, here in Huntsville, that we've always been some of the lowest paid stagehands in the nation. In fact, the Southeast as a whole has always lagged behind, and Chattanooga and Huntsville were always just at the bottom of that list. We managed now to get a contract that is very similar to contracts in Birmingham, Atlanta, Nashville, and other places, which basically offer a living wage, or what we consider to be closer to a living wage than we had before. As you know, companies like Amazon have spent billions of dollars convincing the general public that $15 an hour is a living wage. We introduced that as a starting point for a discussion, but now it seemed to become this standard that's a living wage. But anyone who's ever tried to live on $15 an hour can tell you that it's not. We now start around $19, $20 an hour, and we go up from there depending on your skill set and that kind of thing. But where we are now is basically, in line with the rest of the Southeast, which, still lags behind the rest of the nation when it comes to our earning potential. But we at least feel like now we have protections in the workplace that we haven't had before. We have, under this new contract, we have a bigger hand in safety in the workplace, which, as you know, unions are champions in that arena. It's so much easier for me to stand up there and preach safety than it is for someone who has to sign the checks or someone who never on the stage. Like a lot of places, you have managers who are making decisions on safety who don't partake in the daily activities, and
may have never.
That's where unions come in.
Yeah.
We should take the lead. We should take the lead in those areas, but we face the same problems that all unions face, and you know better than we do that all labor unions are under assault with policies across the nation undermining workers' collective bargaining rights, stripping union workers of wages, benefits, stuff we deserve. And like all union folks, it's our job to fight to strengthen the federal labor laws and protect the right to organize. And for unions, we have the right to organize and bargain for higher wages and better benefits. And for us, that's becoming a reality.
Yeah, that's great. What were you about to say, Adam?
Well, I think as Huntsville, pivots to being a big entertainment city here in the Southeast and bringing in, a music industry presence here, I think it really, it's such a great timing to see this because, all these fantastic shows that are coming into Huntsville over the next year, great artists. I mean, some of my favorite bands, I think, you name any genre and there's a good group coming through. But I think it's important that it be good union labor that is putting these shows on, and that the folks who are putting these shows on can live a good life and have the safety and wages they deserve. So it's right on time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bob, we really appreciate your time. If this sounds interesting, let's say there's a listener out there that's like, oh man, starting at $19 an hour, prepping for shows at the VBC, the Orion Amphitheater, the Toyota Field. That sounds interesting. Maybe I want to do that. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can call our business agent at 256-690-1622. Her name is Kelly, and she will take your information and hopefully start you down the path like that I went on and Adam is on now. It's a great way to make a living, and it's a great bunch of folks to work with.
Awesome. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. See you later.
All right. Bye. So we've been talking about some of the best arguments for school privatization and why they are bunk. We've been talking to Bob from the Stagehands Union about their new contract with the VBC. If you've missed any of that, no worries at all. The program is available online on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can search for The Valley Labor Report wherever you find content online, and you can listen to whatever part of the show that you missed. We're going to take a really quick break. On the other side, we're going to be talking to the Ironworkers, Local 477, about some of the work that they've got going on and about some of the ways the Biden administration has been helping trade workers, so you don't want to miss it. Don't change the channel. You're listening to The Valley Labor Report. Support for this program also comes from the Ironworkers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need ironworkers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBW is the right choice.
Energy Alabama is a locally operated and membership-based nonprofit organization focused on advancing Alabama's clean energy future through education and advocacy. Many people in charge of infrastructure and building decisions simply don't know how viable clean and renewable energy is, and to that end, Energy Alabama has provided instruction to thousands of adults and tens of thousands of K-12 students across the state, and they are working hard to build careers in clean energy and help everyday Alabamians save money on their utility bills. Learn more about their work and how you can join at energyalabama.org.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys of Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs are proud to represent working people in Alabama and across the Southeast. They have over 100 years of experience representing injured workers in workers' compensation, personal injury, and disability claims. Let their attorneys help you when you get injured on the job. You can find them at www.mtandj.com or 855-617-9333. Let Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs help you when you get injured on the job. Again, the website is www.mtandj.com or the phone number 855-617-9333. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services from other law firms.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136, out of Central Alabama. Learn more at IBEW136.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857, and you can leave us a voicemail throughout the week. We might play it on the next program. The International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamental, and Reinforcing Ironworkers Union represents 120,000 members in North America. Members of the Ironworkers have worked on nearly every major construction project you can think of. The Golden Gate Bridge, the Sears Tower, the St. Louis Arch, the oil sands plant expansion in Alberta, the World Trade Center, and the Freedom Tower. And the Ironworkers Local 477 represents hundreds of workers here in North Alabama. And we've got the business representative on the line with us now, Eddie Mitchell. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Morning, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Glad to have you on. So, Eddie, we're going to be talking about some of the stuff y'all got going on locally, but first, there's some things going on nationally with the trades that are really pretty important and pretty good. And one of those being the the Biden administration is proposing reforms to the enforcement of the DavisBacon Act. So, can you start off by explaining what the DavisBacon Act is and what it does now?
The DavisBacon Act was created by two lawyers, or they were either lawyers or representatives, Davis and Bacon, and it sets a prevailing wage, or it's anything with federal funding. I think it's over $2,000 is what it throws into being a DavisBacon Wage job, and then the DavisBacon Wage will be based off whoever prevails in that area.
Gotcha. And so what does that mean? Who prevails in the area?
It's not always the union. Most of the time it's the union wage, and but it's not always. We talked the other day. That's one reason that we need a survey done in Huntsville area, because we've had so much work in the past several years that I feel like we'll probably prevail there at this point. And something to note is if it's a non-union iron worker or pipe fitter or whatever, if they're working on the DavisBacon job, then they have to put all the money on their check or benefits included unless they have a defined benefits contribution plan. That's not payroll deductible.
Right, and so the DavisBacon sets a prevailing wage on DavisBacon jobs, and the wage it incorporates. You've got there's a spreadsheet you can go and look at DavisBacon wages in different areas, and you've got this one column that has the wages, and maybe that's $20 an hour, and then you've got another that has your benefits, and maybe that's another $20 an hour, and that would be things like paid leave or defined pensions and health care and things like this. And so you're saying that if a worker is working for a contractor that does not offer a pension and health care and things like this, they have to lump everything into the wage, right? So if you're combined, if you've got a DavisBacon wage sets $20 an hour plus another $20 an hour in benefits. If you don't have any benefits, the contractor has to pay you $40 an hour. Is that right?
That is correct.
So how is that enforced right now? Like, how has that been enforced?
It is enforced by the Department of Labor, and it's usually very poorly enforced. If I've got somebody's check stub and they're willing to anonymously talk to someone with a DOL, usually I can get them paid back. They'll go back and pay what they were supposed to pay, but just me calling doesn't get it like it needs to. But some of the changes that are going to be happening, they're going to give the DavisBacon more teeth, so to speak. They're going to make it stronger, and it needs to be changed. And they're going to also speed it up to where the DavisBacon wage is actually going to keep up with the wage in the area. Like right now, the DavisBacon wage for an iron worker at Madison County is, I think it's less than $30 an hour, and there's plenty of people making way more than $30 an hour doing iron working hustle. So,
right, $30 an hour, including benefits or just the wage?
Well, most our scale is 29 plus benefits, so it's around $45, $46 an hour total package. But there's some open shop guys that are making 30, 32 up there.
32 total package.
Yeah, $30 to $32 an hour.
Yeah, and so the way that the wage is set is like the DavisBacon wage is set is like a survey of what are the wages and in the area, and so we're going to kind of set it somewhere in there, maybe towards the higher end or whatever. And one of the reasons that you're saying that it's so low is because it's been so long since a survey has been done in Huntsville. So, you're not accounting for inflation. You're not accounting for, maybe workers having more leverage and getting better wages that way. You're not accounting for all these changes in the environment. And so the DavisBacon wage is actually lower in a lot of cases than some people are are getting, and so it needs to be updated. And these proposed reforms are going to do these updates more often.
Yeah, and I don't think it's been just like, it ain't been 10 years since we've had a survey, but the last survey, I don't think we prevailed there. So again, that's why the rate's so cheap. And if a contractor that works, say, at Redstone all the time, it's open shop, when it comes time for them to turn in what they're paying, of course, they're going to turn in as little as they can to keep the wage as low as they can. So.
Right. And you were talking yesterday about when we spoke on the phone about the enforcement and how difficult it is to actually get it enforced. And you would say things about how, you can't actually get people back wages unless they're willing to work with you, right? Like if you go onto a work site and you're talking to somebody and you're able to figure out like, oh, this guy is being underpaid, like he's being illegally underpaid, and we can get him back wages, we can get her back wages. You can't actually do that if they're not willing to work with you, if they're not willing to help get you the evidence, and they might not be willing to do that because they fear rightly that their boss might retaliate against them, right?
100%. That's correct. And when you say work with us, they don't have to join the union for me to help them. There's plenty of guys that I know and still talk to that are open shop, and they, for whatever reason, they stay where they're at. But if they get on a DavisBacon job, they always call me and say, "Hey, what am I supposed to be making on my check here?" And I'll pull it up and send it to them. And I've got some of those guys back paid on a job in Hillsboro. They did a water treatment plant, and a local contractor here hung the building, and they paid them guys way under DavisBacon rate. So I help them get back paid. We've got a guy with our international department, Christopher Berger, that's all he deals with is DavisBacon stuff, and he's pretty good. Usually if we can get him on the phone, he'll run it from the top down instead of me running it from Alabama. He'll go through DC and push it all the way down, and it gets better results. And
and y'all do that because as a as union folks, as working folks, right? You want to, the part of the labor movement, part of the driving force there is to increase the material conditions, to make better the material conditions of like all working people, but also because there's, if you've got a contractor that's routinely undercutting the DavisBacon wages, then they can bid lower, and they can take projects, they can take projects away from y'all's contractors, away from the union contractors, because they're illegally underpaying their workers, right?
Yeah, 100%. And if I feel like if we're not doing something like that to help run it down, then we're not helping our contractors, and they're the lifeblood of our union, just as are our members. But without contractors, we don't have a payroll coming in. So.
Right, and one of the things that contractors will do, that the non-union contractors will do to make it difficult for the workers and for their allies, like in unions that maybe they're not even a part of, to enforce DavisBacon wages, the DavisBacon wages and protections and things like that, is that they'll hire undocumented immigrants. And the undocumented immigrants, of course, they've got there's like a compounding element of fear for them in fighting against their boss, because you've got the normal fear that anybody's going to have, like, oh, if I retaliate or if I fight against the boss for their mistreatment of me, maybe I get fired. If you're an undocumented immigrant, you're not only going to get fired, you could be deported, right? I mean, that's something that that you've had to deal with on multiple occasions, where contractors are abusing these folks, and then by proxy abusing the U.S. workers, right?
Yes, and not only that, but there's also the language barrier there. And then if they're not just directly stealing the wages from their employees by underpaying them, a lot of times they'll also misclassify them. They'll list a ironworker as a laborer or something like that, where the negotiated rate is considerably lower, and that's another way that they steal money. And that's something else that we do, is we go after that and we prove where they're being misclassified.
So how are the proposed reforms to the DavisBacon wages, how is that going to help workers feel safer in reporting employer misconduct? Is there anything specifically addressing those concerns in these proposed reforms?
Yeah, they were going to strengthen to where there would be less retaliation, or go after those contractors that retaliate. And like I said earlier, they're going to also speed up what they're doing so that the rate is more current, instead of the rate now is what was paying 5 or 10 years ago. You know, that's with inflation, like you said, it's not even keeping up with the times.
Right.
Those both seem common sense, but very, very necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the DavisBacon is not a bad thing. It eliminated the race to the bottom is what it did, and it leveled the playing field as far as all contractors, to where you're not getting the project based on cheap labor. You're getting the project, the labor rate's the same. So
right,
it eliminates that, and that's a good thing for all contractors, whether it's an open shop contractor or a union contractor.
And it's good for the customers. It's good for the customers because they're going to get better work, because they're not going to be awarding just based on who's going to give me the lowest, the cheapest price. They're going to get better work for it.
Correct.
So the next the other thing that the Biden administration has done that's going to be affecting trade workers is the expansion of the use of project labor agreements by the federal government. So first off, what is a project labor agreement? What is that? What does that do? What does that mean?
It's an agreement between the customer or the end user, and or that's where it derives from, and it usually sets a certain wage rate, which is oftentimes higher than DavisBacon. The last one that we had up here at Toyota Mazda, it also created a stipulation where you had to hire a local labor pool, and you had to exhaust all resources here to hire local labor, and then if there was unavailable, then of course you could bring in, and there was a percentage. I think you could, if a contractor came from out of state or out of town, they could bring 20% of their own workforce, but you had to hire 80% local. So it kept the money here in our local economy, and that's important to me. It's I hate seeing out of state plates hanging hospitals and stuff like that, because I know that money's leaving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that seems, again, just like Adam said, that seems like super common sense. But and you mentioned Toyota Mazda. And you said that that Governor Ivey tried to get Toyota Mazda to not agree to a project labor agreement, and to use out-of-state workers to do the plant.
Well, yeah, there was not enough local workers here or not enough open shop local workers here to cover that entire project, so they would have definitely had to outsource it out of state. But yeah, that is correct. That's what that goes against our own constituents, and it doesn't matter whether you're union or non-union at that point. If it would not have been a PL, like there were non-union contractors there, but they had to pay the negotiated rate. At least they could pay more, but they had to pay at least that negotiated rate. So it benefits everybody, open shop or union workers.
Right. And that's just amazing to me that she was pushing Toyota Mazda to try to make sure that they only use non-union labor, to the point of being willing to import out-of-state workers to instead of using Alabama union members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not surprising, but it definitely bothers me big time. Why wouldn't you want the money to stay right here in your own community? With workers who are living here, paying taxes here, it just, I guess it makes too much sense.
Yeah.
And to me, there's a big difference. A lot of your politicians are pro-union, a lot of them are non-union, and a lot of them are anti-union. I have a problem with the anti-union ones, but I don't not necessarily have a problem with the non-union, or the people that aren't beating their chest and screaming union,
right,
because they have to support all constituents. But we're here to help everybody, and that's the message that's got to get out there. We're not here to hurt a contractor. I mean, there's open shop contractors and hustle that right now we're helping supplement their labor force, and we've got a great relationship with those people. It just took about 3 years for them to realize that we're not we're not the bad guys. If we can help you, we will. If we can't, we won't hurt you. It's
right. And the project labor agreements also guarantee a utilization of apprenticeships and safety standards. Can you talk about some of that?
Absolutely. That's huge. That's huge for us. And again, the apprenticeship, it doesn't guarantee it to be a union job, but it makes it really hard for an open shop contractor, and because most of them do not have a certified or accredited or registered apprenticeship program. So by us using apprenticeship programs, we guarantee you that training, that third-party training, is available. It's free to the contractor. It keeps growing the skill set here. It keeps the people here that can do the work, so that we don't wind up having to outsource every bit of it to get it done. We strengthen our local labor force. And when we do that, we grow our local economy. It's good for everybody.
Right. And so what the Biden administration did, he signed an executive order at an Ironworkers local union hall. I believe it was in D.C. maybe, to increase the use of project labor agreements. Can talk to us about that and what that executive order does.
The executive order was anything with $35 million of federal funding would be a project labor agreement. And that's huge. That's really big for us. I can't think of a way to guarantee better working conditions and better pay for anybody than doing that. That's in my lifetime, that's the best thing any elected official that I know of has done for the way I make a living. And also it helps everybody. Like I said,
it's looking at ways to grow the economy from the bottom up. And so I think that's a great development.
And again, I mean, it's just so common sense. If we're using taxpayer dollars, we should be tying strings to that. We should be saying, like, look, you've got to pay a good wage. You've got to have safe working conditions. You've got to have people who know what the hell they're doing. Right. You've got to have people that have trained. I mean, this is just why would you not want this? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and this is, and I keep going back to it's not a bad thing for open shop contractors, because if you were an open shop contractor right now and you were going to do a job at Redstone that had $35 million in federal funding and it was a project labor agreement, I mean, you could literally call the wage rate's already established. It doesn't matter who you pay, whether it's your guys or our guys. The wage rate's going to be the same. You can call us. We've got the training, or the guys that are trained. It's great for everybody. Right. And they should be utilizing local contractors. That's what I want to stress is, like, again, the PLA is going to help all local contractors.
Right. So let's go ahead and move to here locally. The Local 477, y'all are a sponsor of the show. We appreciate that, and y'all are doing a lot of work. Y'all are really out there, getting stuff done, and so let's talk to us about how the jobs actually work for trade unions. We talked to Bob about this a bit ago, because the stagehands are operate pretty similarly to trade unions. But how do y'all do that? If somebody joins the union, how can they expect to get a job? Like, how does that process work?
Well, I'll start, since I'm the organizer at local. I'll start by mainly the guys I deal with. The guy comes to me, he's got enough experience to go out at the journeyman rate. We'll send him over and get him a weld test, or we'll give him a written test just to kind of check what he knows, to make sure that if there's any gaps, that we can fill in those gaps before he gets on the job. And we send him to work. When he gets laid off, he signs out a work list, and he's usually, like right now, he may be turned around the next day going on another job. It's usually most people are not off a week. And when I got in, I think we talked about this before. My dad said, "You're an idiot. You're going to be broke and laid off all the time." And I think I made almost twice what he made the first year. But I was never off work. It was there was always somewhere to go, and there's always been somewhere to go. And it's the same. If you're a good hand, you won't have to hunt a job. A job will hunt you. It's the same way.
Right. Yeah. And so So yeah, you sign up, you become a member of the union, and then just like Bob was talking about, there are jobs, and you get called for jobs, and sometimes you might work there for a few months, sometimes maybe for a few years, and and one of the things that I really like about the trade unions is that because they're international, like you said, there's always work somewhere. There's always work somewhere, and so if you're willing to travel, you never have to worry about being out of work. I talked to a pipe fitter a couple of years ago about how he made like $250,000 working a job in California in 1 year. So there's always work somewhere, and because the trade unions are international organizations, they can set you up if work maybe dries up a little bit in your local area. They can set you up with a job somewhere else if you're willing to relocate.
Not only that, we've had guys whose spouses like moved to Huntsville for whether it be like a job in the medical field or something with defense, and be an iron worker from another state way off. They come here, and the transfer process is extremely easy. So then they can uproot where they're at, move here, and then they're still iron worker here. All their money's still going to a pension. So it's nice. It's nice to have that luxury.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so what kind of work have y'all got going on in Huntsville? What are the projects that the Ironworkers Local 477 is working on here? Not just in Huntsville, but in North Alabama.
Well, we're doing the structural, the precast, and the glass or glazing work at the FBI project at Redstone Arsenal. We did the test stand for Blue Origin, the demo and rebuild at Redstone Arsenal. We did the Toyota Mazda project. We've got Facebook data center going. We're on the second or third phase of it. We've got a contractor that's already been awarded the next phase of it. We've got a motor plant expansion coming up at Toyota. We've got a simple cycle, 3-unit simple cycle going on at Carver Steam Plant right now. We've got work at Counts, Tennessee at the paper mill. We keep a lot of work with TVA. We've got a Browns Ferry outage, nuclear outage winding up right now. And we're covered up with work.
Yeah, you said that y'all have like basically every single member is out on a job somewhere, 100% employment basically, right?
Yeah. If they're not working, it's because they're at home drawing unemployment and they don't want to go to work. It's a lot of these guys will work out of state and get a good unemployment check coming in, $400 or $500 a week, and they'll kick back and take off for a few months and draw their pennies.
Right. And I mean that's pretty good, being able to go to work if you're if you got the job. I mean that's a good problem to have. Having all those jobs available. What exactly are y'all doing on these jobs? Like, give us an average day of like an iron worker at the Facebook site.
We've got guys from sticking bolts, bolting up the iron, plumbing the iron, making sure everything's plumbed straight. We got connectors that are hanging the iron. We've got a decking crew, hair steels up there slinging decking, shooting Nelson studs. It's that's a structural job. We've got guys that are at Browns Ferry that's been welding, nonstop welding. We've got we had an outage that just finished up, or what's still going at Castilium. It's on a furnace, a lot of welding. It's there's so many different facets of ironwork, whether it's tying rods or structural jobs or glass work, or ornamental. People can figure out what they like to do and kind of chase that type of work, or they can do a little bit of different here and there. So you don't get tired of doing one thing. There's a lot of diversity in what we do.
Right.
That's really cool.
And so why are y'all getting all this work? You mentioned that there's open shop contractors, there's non-union contractors out here that they could get this work theoretically, but y'all are getting all this work. Why is that?
Well, the number one reason we're getting all this work is because our members, they go out, they do the job, they take a lot of pride in what they do. One of the biggest differences I noticed, I worked non-union for a while before I got in the union, and I kind of feel like I always had pride in what I do, but there's a different sense of pride when you do it, or when I'm doing it through the union, because I understand that I'm not representing just myself, but I'm representing everybody. The people that came before me, the people that took time out of their day to teach me a better way, a easier way, a safer way to do it, a faster way to do it. So that's where our members are at. They take a lot of pride in what they do. They're going to go to work and do the best job that they can. They look ahead. It's a culture. It's the best way I can put it. It's a whole different culture.
And y'all's safety ratings are really, really good too. You know, in the commercial that y'all sent me to read, you mentioned the EMR and TRIR ratings. Talk to us about the safety ratings and the increased focus on safety that y'all have, maybe as opposed to non-union contractors.
We definitely have a huge focus on safety, and that was kind of our that's our go-to. That's one of the biggest reasons to hire our guys is because there's so much emphasis on safety. I mean, I've got OSHA 10, I've got OSHA 30, I've got OSHA 510, I've got OSHA 500. I can teach the 10 or the 30. All those classes are available to any of our members. It's not it's the sky's the limit. It's however far you want to go. That's and it's safety culture has been extremely strong since I got here. It's but I don't think any contractor goes to work in the morning and says, "Hey, let's see if we can hurt somebody today." That's right. That's nobody's MO for sure. But being able to have guys looking out for one another and understand that if this contractor gets a bad safety rating, they're not going to be able to bid on the next job. And so we take care of our local contractors big time on that because we want them to be able to bid the next job. We like working for them,
Yeah. Apprenticeships. When is the next round? When does the next round of the apprenticeship program start? What are the kind of people that y'all take, and when do applications need to be in?
We take everybody. We take anybody that wants to come. You got to have a high school diploma or a GED. We take applications year round. Let's see, the next class, they usually do interviews in August, and the class usually starts in September. It's a 3-year program. First year usually goes at night, 2 nights a week. Second year and third year go 4 weeks a year. They've been going, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So that way you still get a good check both weeks, and it works out good for everybody.
Go. And where do they apply if they're interested in being an apprentice?
They can apply at our local or at our training center in Sheffield, Alabama.
And what if a listener is a journeyman level iron worker? They've been doing this for a while, but they're non-union and they're interested in maybe getting on with 477. What do they need to do?
And get in the car and be at the office Monday morning. That's we get them to work. We're literally that covered up.
Awesome. All right. Well, Eddie, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Jacob, again, and as always, thank you again for having us on, and we appreciate what you do.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. We've been talking to Eddie Mitchell. Eddie Mitchell is the business representative for the Ironworkers Local 477 about some of the things that the Biden administration has done for trade workers and some of the stuff that they've got going on locally. I mean, they are covered up with work. You heard all the projects that they've got going on. I mean, Facebook, Blue Origin, FBI, Colbert Steam Plant, parking decks downtown Huntsville. There's a bank in Athens, Toyota Mazda, all sorts of projects they've got folks on. And so you heard him. If you're interested in joining as an apprentice or as a journeyman level iron worker, get in touch with them. Google Ironworkers Local 477 and be at their office tomorrow. Give them a call, and they'll put you to work. So if you missed any part of the program, you can obviously find us online. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to the full show there or catch clips that interests you. All you got to do is search for the Valley Labor Report. We're going to take a break really quick, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the real Republican agenda on taxation. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. Energy Alabama supports consumers and is a leader in advocating for them. They have been able to successfully fight off utility rate increases in the state, reduce fees for electric vehicles, increase electric vehicle infrastructure spending, and they secured a $100 million refund by Alabama Power after the utility overcharged customers for fuel. To learn more about their work advocating for customers and to join the fight, go to energyalabama.org.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
The attorneys of Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs are proud to represent working people in Alabama and across the Southeast. They have over 100 years of experience representing injured workers in workers' compensation, personal injury, and disability claims. Let their attorneys help you when you get injured on the job. You can find them at www.mtandj.com or 855-617-9333. Let Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs help you when you get injured on the job. Again, the website is www.mtandj.com or the phone number 855-617-9333. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services from other law firms. North Alabama DSA is looking for folks to work for a better North Alabama. They prioritize mutual aid, municipal activism, and union solidarity. Contact them on social media or dsanorthalabama@gmail for more information.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
Hometown Action is a proud sponsor of the Valley Labor Report, and we're here to help keep you in the loop on the assault on your right to protest, picket, and peaceably assemble in Alabama. The anti-protest bill is back this year, and it's as bad as ever. There is huge interest in building worker power and increasing unionization in Alabama that has corporations scared. Don't let their influence on our state legislators become another tool to arrest striking workers and union supporters. This racist bill is especially problematic for black organizers and unnecessarily gives law enforcement broad discretion to define even small peaceful gatherings as a riot. Tell your Alabama legislators to say no to House Bill 2. We've set up an easy way for you to do that. You can go to hmtn.link/HB2 where you'll find more information and an email template you can use right from your smartphone. That link is hmtn.link/HB2. You'll also find more info on social media at Hometown Action.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only Union Talk Radio Show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, and my co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, give us a call. Our phone line is open. The number is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. And if you listen to the program as a podcast, you can leave us a voicemail anytime at the same number. So, this was just absolutely astounding to me. Astounding. Republicans love to say that they hate taxes, right? They couch it in support for the middle class. Super scare quotes there.
Whatever that's supposed
to
be.
The middle class. That's not even a real thing. But we know that's bunk, right? Of course. We know that's bunk. We know the theory that hating taxation is bunk Because the entire history of the Republican Party, okay? Because of the entire history of the Republican Party, we've always been sold on this idea that if we only cut taxes for the wealthy, it's going to trickle down onto us, and we are going to benefit by rich people having more money in their banks somehow. But we know that because as the United States has decreased our taxation on the wealthy, wages and productivity have decoupled. Before, back in the 50s, everybody talks about, the 50s was this golden age for the American quote-unquote middle class. The 50s, the top marginal tax rate was 94%. What is the top marginal tax rate? The top marginal tax rate of 94% meant that for all income that you made over, it was $400,000, I think. Everything that you made over $400,000 was taxed at 94%. Of course, there are loopholes and there are tax breaks, and so very few people actually paid a top marginal tax rate of 94%, right? But it was higher than it is now, of course, obviously. And if you made $400,000, that didn't mean that the rest of your income was taxed at 94%. It's just everything that over $400,000. Okay, that's what marginal taxes are. You've got these tax brackets. That's how that's done. Starting in the 50s and 60s, JFK, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, George Bush, all these people, they cut taxes. All these people cut taxes. And every time they cut taxes, they told us it was going to be good for us. It was going to be good for. There were two things that they did. They would say, one, what I'm doing is cutting your taxes, a poor person, working person. I'm actually cutting your taxes in addition to cutting the wealthy's taxes. But not only are you going to benefit from your taxes being cut, working person, you're going to benefit from the wealthy person's taxes being cut, because all of this money that they have now in their bank account is going to trickle down to you. Okay? So we've got now like 70 years of this. Like 70 years of this experiment has been run in the United States, and it is clearly it has not worked. Giving rich people more money has not helped working people. It's clear. Wages have stagnated. The income and wealth in this country as a percentage is going more to the wealthy than it ever has, while working people's wages have stagnated, while working people work longer hours, while working people have lost our pensions, where working people have lost good health care. Okay? So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But if you needed more evidence that the Republican Party is full of crap on this issue, here's two issues from literally last week. Just last week, in the last 5 days. In Alabama, state Senate Republicans passed a business tax cut. They passed a tax cut for the bosses. Can you imagine passing a tax cut for bosses in the year of our Lord 2022? Before they addressed the grocery tax. We still pay taxes for groceries in Alabama. We are one of the only states in the Union, one of the only states in this great country to still tax groceries. Which is a regressive tax, because it's a sales tax. We talked about this last week, how sales taxes disproportionately affect poor and working people. And they have not cut this tax. We still have a grocery tax in Alabama. And instead of addressing that, instead of moving forward on cutting and eliminating the grocery tax and replacing that lost revenue with eliminating the federal income tax deduction, which primarily benefits wealthy Alabamians, instead of doing that, Alabama State Senate Republicans have once again passed a tax cut for bosses that is going to amount to $23 million in lost revenue for the state of Alabama. Just last week. But it's going to benefit you. That's what they're going to tell you. That's what they're going to tell you. In D.C., this is even worse. In D.C., the Senate Republicans have proposed to literally raise taxes on the poor. Senator Rick Scott from Florida put forward a proposal that's backed by other Senate Republicans that would hike annual taxes on the poorest 40% of people in the United States by $1,000 on average. By $1,000 on average. That means some people in the poorest 40% are going to pay more than $1,000 more than they're already paying in taxes under U.S. Senator Republican Rick Scott's proposal. Why would he do this? Why would he do this? What's his reasoning? His reasoning is, quote, that he doesn't think poor people have enough, quote, skin in the game.
Wow.
This is his words. This is the platform of the Republican Party in Alabama, in Florida, and across the country. This is their priorities. They want to decrease tax liabilities, and Rick Scott's tax proposal would not raise taxes on the richest 1% by a single penny.
Of course not.
He thinks that poor people don't have enough skin in the game. This is the platform of the Republican Party in Alabama and Florida and across the country. They want to decrease the tax liabilities of wealthy people, of bosses, of their donors, and they want to literally increase the tax liability on working people by $1,000 a year on average. On average. That's insane. How do they justify this?
Take money from those who least, with the least amount of money, while those with the most amount of money get to protect it. Get to hide it. Get to, basically decouple from the public good.
It is literal reverse Robin Hood here.
Right.
I mean, good grief.
And, we talked about that a little bit last week with the quality of life in Alabama and just some of the appalling statistics out there about our quality of life. And it is 100% connected to this broken taxation system where, like I said, those with the least amount of money are the ones who are being punished.
Right.
The ones who actually do the work that creates the wealth of our economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because without labor, there is no economy.
No.
And so, and we see the way tax incentives and loopholes and subsidies and write-offs are also geared towards these very same businesses and these very same capitalists so that they can be profitable. It's using the public's treasury and the public's resources to subsidize private profit, while at the same time, we're going to increase the amount of taxes that working people have, that poor people have. It's
right.
It's just disgusting.
We're either going to literally increase it, or we're not going to work towards decreasing the hit that working people feel from taxes, whether that be by increasing their wages or by cutting. Because there's a reason, right? There's a reason that this tax cut for the bosses that passed the state Senate in Alabama last week, there's a reason that that's higher on the priority list than eliminating the grocery tax.
Right.
There's a reason. It's because the people that are hurt by the grocery tax aren't writing $100,000 checks to these people's campaigns.
Right. It shows the priorities. It shows the priorities of, and you look at their budgets, you look at their tax cuts and the legislation that passes through, it's a reflection of their priorities, and the vast majority of us are not represented.
I mean, it is truly, I mean...
And just last week was the grocery tax, or this past week on Tuesday was the grocery tax rally by Alabama Rise. So it's not like,
right. It's not like people aren't talking about this. And there are some Republicans, that will say that they support eliminating the grocery tax. But still, you can say whatever you want. Actions speak louder than words, and actions are more revelatory of your actual priorities than are your words. Like, if you're in office and you're talking to me about how I support eliminating the grocery tax, I don't care. Do it. And if, because there are state Senate Republicans that say they support eliminating the grocery tax. What they should have done, because obviously eliminating the state grocery tax is going to benefit more Alabamians than yet another tax cut for the bosses. Obviously. And this isn't even to say that you should or shouldn't pass this tax cut for the bosses. Like, that's not even what I'm talking about. I don't think you should, but let's just set that, whether it should happen or not, to the side. There's an issue of priorities. And if these people actually supported eliminating the grocery tax, what they could have done, if they wanted to posture or actually do something for working people in Alabama, they could have said, I will not support one more tax cut. I will not support one more tax cut until I pass this tax that is going to help working people. That is my first priority, and my voting record is going to reflect that. I will hold up everything else in this chamber until that's related to taxation until we eliminate the grocery tax. That's something they could have done.
Yeah, and it's a Republican state senator, Andrew Jones, who is carrying the legislation backed by a rise, because it would remove the grocery sales tax, which would greatly benefit the majority of Alabamians, and it replaces that revenue so that our schools don't take a hit, because our schools are already underfunded as it is. So, it addresses that. It's on the table. It could easily be done, and that's why we need representation that looks at the economy from the bottom up as opposed to the top down.
But even this fellow that introduced, who's a Republican who introduced this bill in the Senate, presumably he voted for this tax cut for the bosses. And so, there's still an issue there, even of his part, even of the guy who is proposing this legislation. He's not taking it as seriously as he should be. He is not mobilizing. He's not going on the offensive against folks who are not working towards passing this tax cut for working people. I mean, it's just so frustrating. So, don't be fooled by the things that they're saying. But anyway, we're about out of time here on the radio. As we're wrapping up, let's do a couple of plugs. You can leave us a voicemail, 844-899-TVLR. We've got a new hat. We placed the order last week, but you can still get yours because we ordered some extra. You can go to our website, tvlr.fm. That is it for us on the radio. You can find us online and stay tuned for Overtime. We're talking to Luis Leon as a labor reporter about the Bamazon campaign. We are talking about gas taxes because we did the gas prices because we didn't get to that, and more. So you don't want to miss it. All power to the workers. All right. Just a second.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you.
Just a second. Let's go back to Adam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, so we got rid of the folks on the radio Got rid of folks on the radio.
No more FCC censors.
No more FCC censors. All we got to do is deal with the YouTube censors. So
That's true. Yeah.
So howdy, folks. Thanks for staying with us. We do have a great overtime lined up for you. You can still call in 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857, and we do have a got a voicemail. You can leave us a voicemail throughout the week. But we're going to take a short break really quick, and we're going to be right back with Luis Leon about the Amazon Union campaign.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Stay tuned.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party
heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio show. We are now in overtime, and we've got some good stuff for you today. We are talking to labor reporter Luis Leon about the Amazon union campaign, explaining why we don't want to give cops more power, talking about some updates in the OVEC union case and more. So let's go ahead and get started. Luis Leon is a staff writer for Labor Notes, but he also writes for other outlets in whenever he finds free time. I don't know how he does that. And yesterday he dropped an article for The Real News. We love The Real News. You should check it out, therealnews.com. Our friend Maximilian Alvarez is the editor-in-chief over there. And yesterday, Luis dropped an article for them titled, 1 year after the failed Amazon union drive, workers in Bessemer are voting a second time. And it was really good. And I was wanting to talk about the election anyways, so I figured we'd bring Luis on. So that's what we did. Luis, welcome back to the program. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And we didn't plan to coordinate our Labor Notes shirt colors today. So this is,
you're wearing the same shirt as me? Oh, that's great.
This is a happy coincidence.
I almost wore mine today too, so we could have been 3 for 3. Sorry about that.
Adam's really letting us down.
I know. I'm rocking the old NEA Peace and Justice Caucus, so I at least have the red shirt on with you guys. But
yes,
we love Labor Notes around here.
Yeah, no, we love you guys as well. So thanks for holding up the red flag. So at least you're wearing red. So
absolutely.
Well, it's like an orange. I take that back. It's not quite red.
No, this is red. This is
no, not yours. Adams.
Adams is no. I think Adams is red.
It used to be red. This is faded. It's been a few years since this convention. So.
All right. Well, fair enough.
All right. So let's talk about your article and the big thing that you're trying to do with that article is kind of talking about the second round of the campaign and maybe ways that it's different from the first. And I think you were able to do a bit more on the ground kind of reporting for the first round, weren't you?
Yes. I went down to Alabama and interview workers outside of the Circle K gas station at 4 a.m. So yeah, I was on the ground. This time around, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that, but I wanted to keep up with the story. It's an important election, and the fight of workers in the South, like we got to support it.
Absolutely. So what do you think? What has it seemed to you watching the coverage and talking to folks? I'm sure that you've talked to people on the phone and stuff who are connected to the campaign. What has stuck out to you about the differences this time than last time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first, before getting to that, what has changed? I think one of the first things that the first campaign did was build some infrastructure within this massive warehouse that they could build upon, right? So some of the leaders that, began the organizing last time around, people like Darrell Richardson, Jennifer Bates, they're still around. There were some people that were still around last time that had become more active, like Isaiah Thomas, who I interviewed and, is quoted extensively in the piece. So I think based on what they were able to build, what they've been, what has accelerated, what has been ramped up, is the shop floor actions that workers are taking, right? So one of the first things that you want to do as a union at a company like Amazon, I'd say, is take up space within that company, right? Which is the strategy that some of the Teamsters have said that they want to employ, is the strategy that Amazonians United has been employing in terms of these shop floor actions. I wrote a piece in Labor Notes about how they coordinated 3 walkouts, in New York City and in Maryland at delivery stations, right? Delivery stations are much smaller though than a fulfillment center. So I think what the RWDSU and the workers in Bessemer are doing is, it's a even tougher fight because of how big the warehouse is and the massive number of people that work there. So one of the biggest shifts is just how aggressive they've gotten with the shop floor actions that they're taking, right? Confronting these anti-union consultants, marching under managers to make demands. Like, a union is only as strong as its workers. At Labor Notes, we emphasize that our task as organizers is to fight for democracy. And for us, democracy is power, which means that the more people are involved, the more we can exercise that power and press demands on the boss to meet our needs. So that doesn't happen once you get formal recognition. That happens from the moment you start organizing on the shop floor. So I think that there's a greater recognition of that this time around. And the things have changed. Like, I don't discount that, COVID definitely had an impact last time around. The timeline was much shorter. And, the fact that they already had this other union election, helped them get a foothold in the warehouse. So win or lose, they'll continue to build on that.
Right. And why do you think it is that Amazon is continuing, even in this environment, continuing to flagrantly break the law and interfere with these workers' rights to organize? RWDSU has filed 3 ULPs, and one of them is a ULP to challenge precedent, right? But currently, under current case law, the captive audience meetings are legal. RWDSU is challenging that, but there are a couple other ULPs that they fired that are just blatant illegal conduct, and they're doing this in an environment where, as you point out, the new general counsel for the NLRB, Jennifer Abruzzo, she has, in your article, you say, quote, considerable power to set guidelines for the board's regional offices across the nation for dealing with cases before them. And among the new directives issued during her first months in office, Abruzzo revived a rule known as Joy Silk, which stipulates that a company deemed to have engaged in unfair labor practices for the purposes of blocking a union's organizing campaign can be ordered to recognize and bargain with that union if most workers had signed cards to affiliate and requested recognition from the company. That would be a big step, and Amazon is still breaking the law. Like, why do you think they're not being? Because it's easy. There's so many things that are legal. It would be really easy to just run a above board anti-union campaign. Why aren't they doing that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think it gets at just how much, like, how unleveled the playing field is, right, for workers. Like, I know sometimes folks talk about, like, I'm working on another piece around what happens in union elections, right? And it's like, I would describe them as like fascist dictatorships, right? Because it's not like the boss it's an equal player to like the union, right? Like, the boss workers are required to be at work. The employer has all that time to talk to them, to, hammer them with propaganda. The union has to appeal to workers outside of the warehouse, which is why the importance of rank and file unionism is so key, because it's not the union reaching out to people after work, it's workers themselves organizing among their coworkers, like ADVERTISERS was doing before Amazon kind of like slapped them on the wrist with this no solicitation order, because they understand that they want total control over the workplace. And what Isaiah Thomas was challenging was precisely that. He was challenging the fact that Amazon wants to have total control over its warehouses. So in terms of elections, last time Amazon violated the law, what did it do, right? It had to send a notice that telling workers that, like, basically it was a piece of paper, right? Like that was the consequence for what they did, right? Like they literally, changed the lights, the traffic lights in Bessemer. They installed the mailbox. Like they did so many things.
Wildest incidents, like to change the traffic lights just to minimize the amount of conversations that's
Right.
wild.
Right. But I mean, some of this stuff, I mean, as you folks know, like in terms of some of these things are standard, like union busting tactics, right? So I think it's important to not, also overemphasize them and make them out to be like, something like a new innovation.
Part of overcome, right?
Well, I mean, I think I think that's the challenge.
It's important not to make these obstacles seem like they're impossible to overcome, is what you're saying.
Are brand new.
Right. Well, yeah, it's both, right? They're not brand new. They are tried over and over again because they work. You instill fear in workers. You tell them, hey, we're going to move, like what happened at Nissan, right, in North Carolina, where they said, like, if you vote for a union, we're going to offshore, like you stoke fear, you're going to defeat a unionizing campaign, right? So, and then the other thing is that, yeah, they can be overcome through the kind of shop floor actions that Isaiah, that Dave Winant engaged in. That's the way to build power, as workers, is to talk to our coworkers and see that we are only as strong as we are when we come together and fight for the changes that we demand are necessary to make our workplaces dignified.
Right. And, you mentioned that shop floor action that people like Isaiah and other folks are taking. And you mentioned that in your piece. Quote, in January, Thomas and coworkers in the shipping dock department collected signatures on a petition demanding higher pay, longer breaks, better communication about their rate targets, stuff like that, and delivered that petition to management. And they got some of the things that they were asking for. They got new and more microwaves in the break room. They got more chairs in the break room. Like, these are not only are they taking these actions, but they're taking the actions and they're winning. And they're showing people that they can win. How do you are Isaiah and these other folks that you're talking to, are they saying that kind of stuff, showing the viability of collective action, that is making a difference in their coworkers' perception of the viability of a union writ large?
Yeah, I mean, that's another good question. I mean, I think we see it in terms of, like, if you remember last time around, in terms of the rally that I went down to Alabama, it was pouring rain, and you look at how many people came out. There wasn't as public of a campaign of union support, right? So what these shop floor actions do is that they serve to some degree as a structure test. It tells the union, hey, these are workers that are willing to go publicly toe-to-toe with management and have an oppositional relationship to management. Not some business unionism bullshit that we're partners with management, but saying it's us versus them. And this is what we're going to demand from you, and you're going to give it to us. Right. So that not only builds power, but it also sends clear information to the union that workers are ready to fight. So it may seem, a person that has not perhaps been involved in campaigns may look at an action around a microwave and chairs, right? And they might be like, that's like, okay, like what does that mean? What it means is that what ultimately these workers are fighting for is control over their workplace. So the right to have a say. So one of the things that Isaiah emphasized was this idea that, Amazon stifles workers' voices. And that's something that to some degree people say, and it becomes a talking point. But in Amazon, there's real weight behind that, just because of how much control the company wants to exert. Like the last time around, time off task, right? When workers were penalized for not meeting productivity quotas, that was a big thing for workers, right? So that means that's like talking about auto workers protesting fighting against speed up. Like this is what it's about. So I think we are seeing a more public campaign of support for the union than we did last time. So I mentioned briefly, and the picture for this article is photographs of workers saying, "I'm voting union yes." So that it's also, a structure test of how willing workers are to go up against the boss when they publicly put their names out there. So I mean, I'm not like a big fan of like the technocratic unionism of like saying you must check off these boxes, because if that were the case, if there were a perfect formula and we just, used it, like, we would have like, I don't know, 70% unionization rate in this country, but that's not the case, right? But there's some nuts and bolts things that do work, right? It does work to talk to your coworkers. One of the things that I lightly criticized was the whole idea of like treating union elections like U.S. congressional races, right? Where you have a bunch of people coming in, high headliner endorsements and so forth. The most important thing is Isaiah talking to his coworkers. And that's why Amazon, responded so aggressively against it, wrote him up, gave him a warning, because they realized that it's not Bernie Sanders flying down to Alabama that's going to win this. It's Isaiah and thousands of other workers at that warehouse talking with one another and building power together.
Right. And the picture campaign on social media that you mentioned is something that is it's like amazing to me. I mean, every day they've got like a dozen pictures of new people that have a RWDSU shirt on and this big sign saying, "I'm voting union yes because," and it gives their reasons why, and that's a big deal, right? To be willing to put your name out there, your face out there, and saying, "I'm going to vote for the union. I'm going to vote to be a union. I am," that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And showing, and the more their coworkers see people taking these actions, the more they are likely to take these actions, right? The more comfortable they're going to feel voting yes, voting to unionize, and maybe taking these actions themselves, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I mean, I think when we see people come out, it gives us courage to also come out and stand with those folks, right? I think it's very hard to run like an underground campaign with a few leaders, with just, off-site meetings that people come to, like an underground organizing committee that no one knows or has met. Like, that's hard. I get that in different phases of a campaign, like that's necessary. And like I said, I think the other campaign, the other vote, like had certain like real restrictions. But I do think there was a deliberate change in strategy. Like we haven't seen, like I just mentioned, the high profile supporters, we haven't seen that as take as much of space as it did before. And maybe that was because of COVID, right? They couldn't go out to knock on people's doors. So they said, we're going to rely on social media, on, just the media to get the message out. The thing is, when I spoke to people at Circle K and I asked them, what are you reading? They were reading the local paper in Alabama. They weren't reading the New York Times. So you gotta think about what is the information that's going to get to these workers, not to sympathizers outside of the warehouse. The workers that matter the most are the ones that are working side by side with Isaiah. The folks that need to be inoculated against these talking points, these scare tactics by Amazon, are those folks on the shop floor, not somebody else outside of it. As much as that support would help, it's not going to help, in terms of winning a campaign. So I think there was some reflection on that.
Yeah, because I mean, we can't vote yes as much as we support the effort, and as much as the public and community support is important.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're not voting. Those folks are.
Right.
And you mentioned the fact that media coverage and Bernie Sanders coming, that's not going to get somebody to vote yes. And that seems really, that point seems to me to be really driven home by the fact that there was a poll released recently of Jefferson County residents, and it was something like 70% of the people there supported the union campaign, and obviously there was a partisan breakdown there. 49% of Republicans and like 80% of Democrats, 70-80% of black folks did, and 60% of white folks, and then and it was like a similar thing last time as far as the community. I think that there was a similar poll last year about the community support for the campaign, but the people actually inside the facility, the ones that voted, they were, even though by demographics, their demographics are even more like the people that support the union in the broader community, meaning, Amazon workers are more likely to be women, are more likely to be minorities, are more likely to be black than Jefferson County as a whole. And those are the communities that supported, that didn't work there, that supported the campaign. And yet the folks that actually worked there ended up voting really heavily against the campaign. And that speaks to the fact that, the outside media, whatever, people talking about it outside the workplace, somebody coming down and saying you should vote for it, that's not actually what is going to convince people. It's what's happening in their lives. It's what they're seeing on the shop floor. And what they saw on the shop floor last year was management harassing them. Was management retaliating against the union campaign? There wasn't very many RWDSU shirts in the plant. There wasn't very much support coming from workers, publicly. And so that's kind of what workers saw. And so workers were not unreasonably scared. And the folks that I've talked to, they said that it seems to me that the feeling in the shop is different this time. What are your thoughts about that? I know I kind of rambled for a bit.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good. I mean, there's a lot there. Let me take one step back before answering that question, right? So one thing that people sometimes neglect to mention, and you folks know this because you're local, and is that Alabama had, like, in terms of southern states, it has one of the highest unionization rates, right? And at one point it was like above like 10%. Like since like 2008, it's been on a steady decline. Like now it's like 5.9 or something. I forgot what I quoted in the article, but the point is that there's still a living memory of people being in unions, of people knowing what unions can do. When workers come together and form them, what kind of dignified life a union can afford a person, right? So there's that, and that's important to understand, right? Like we're talking about, and Bessemer and the going back to the steel industry, like that's still within living memory. It doesn't guarantee you that you're going to win, of course, because in another article, I didn't quote this from Dale, but Dale came from a similar like warehousing thing where warehouse operation, not an Amazon company, where he was earning, I believe he said like about $12. And then he went to Amazon, right? And he got a pay boost to $15.80. So the idea that workers felt like, okay, industry and union jobs have been, auto parts plants have been closing. The ones that are open are non-union, where it's very dangerous. And there's studies that show, in comparison to Detroit, where auto parts plants are unionized, like the accident rates are like twice the national average in Alabama. So folks are saying, here are my options. They're making a judgment. So while it's true that unionized warehouses have paid higher wages, it is not true that, folks in other warehouses are earning less. Like they're earning less, and Amazon represents a pay boost. Now, what has happened from the last campaign to now? We have seen workers more aggressively demanding increases in pay. We had the Great Resignation. We had the John Deere strike. So we've had all these things that indicate that workers have strong bargaining power. So while maybe a year ago, $15 an hour was like, okay, like that's pretty good. Like now they're like, that's not enough because of inflation, because of all the things that have happened, right? So I think that might also, that's a hypothesis, right? Because I would like to talk to a more representative sample of the workers to say like, yeah, that's what's really on people's mind. And I just haven't done that, right? So my conversations were off the record with other folks, that are close to it and with workers. So from that, what I can say is that there's definitely been somewhat of a shift in terms of how folks are seeing this unionization campaign and Amazon's tactics. So I note in the article that the turnover, as high as it is at other warehouses, at this warehouse in Alabama, it wasn't 150%. It was more like 50%. So that means that you have 50% of people that went through this last time and are already prepared for what to expect. They already saw that Amazon said, if you vote against this union, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And they saw Amazon not do that, right? So I think that also plays a role in how in how people are willing to say, you know what? I'm seeing people fight for this and getting what they want. A union can fight, and we are the union. And if we fight, we can make some changes here, right? So I think that has registered in people's minds. So I don't know, Jacob, if that gets at your question. Sorry for the preamble to get to that point.
No. I think you matched my preamble word for word. So
and that was very important. It is important to note that Jefferson County does have a strong union history that's in living memory, and I think it is important to reflect on how the conditions have changed inside the warehouse and just in the broader economy around it in just 1 year's time. So I hope all that bodes well for the union campaign.
So, there is a lot of other organizing happening at Amazon across the country, and you referred to some of that in the article, and you've written some more stuff about that. The Amazon Labor Union is closer to you. You're a Yankee. You're from New York. And
we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you. And that's closer to you. That's in New York. And there's 2 elections that the Amazon Labor Union is conducting now. And you mentioned Amazonians United. How do you see the state of organizing at Amazon at these other places? Like, can you give us, because I haven't kept up with that as much as, obviously the Bessemer's in my backyard, right? So what's been going on, and what are the connections, you think?
Yeah, I follow more closely Amazonians United in terms of the work that they've been doing, and they've been doing this since, they've been doing this for a while. So they have been building infrastructure similar to what I described as possibly the RWDSU strategy, right? Like, even if, let's say, this vote doesn't go in their favor, they're continuing to take up more space and build infrastructure in the warehouse, right? They know that this is a long fight. This is not something that's going to happen, from 1 year to 1 year's time. And even if they were to win, the path to a contract would be very difficult with just one fulfillment center. So,
and just really quickly before the rest of your answer, it's worth noting that RWDSU is an affiliate of UFCW, which does have an institutional memory of doing this, of going 3 or 4 rounds to win a big shop. That happened in Smithfield in North Carolina, I believe. They went 3 or 4 rounds over 15 years and finally won a contract there. So this is a union that has shown a willingness to continue investing in campaigns, in workers organizing against really tall odds.
Absolutely. And I think we have to, as a movement, we have to recognize that, right? Like there are no shortcuts. Like this is a fight for the long haul. And what that means, if the fight is for the long haul, that means that it's not a staff-driven, operation, that you're really building workers' democracy in these workplaces, and it builds up, an oppositional culture of us versus them, which is what I find so impressive and moving about what Amazon workers are doing in Alabama. To your point about Amazonians United, right? I feel like they have also been building, their base of power in different delivery stations, stretching all the way to Canada, right? So these delivery stations employ at most like 100 people, right? And it's just an easier place to organize. And strategically, you can really hamper Amazon's whole operations and its promise that you're going to get your same-day delivery, your 2-day delivery on time, right? Because that's the last mile from, when someone at a fulfillment center packs an order and then is sorted and sent out to be picked up and delivered to someone's doorstep. That's a key role. That's a key node in the supply chain. So I think they're doing really impressive, really great work. They are not affiliated with an official union. They are kind of like a throwback to the auto workers and the CIO. The other union that you mentioned in Staten Island, I haven't followed as much. So I obviously support any worker that's fighting for dignity in the workplace, but I haven't followed it as closely. So I can't say much about them and what they're doing. I mean, they're holding elections at 2 warehouses. That's what I know. But I can't speak to like their organizing. I can't say like I can about Amazonians United and about RWDSU. Like there's some real organizing happening. There's even if the odds are really tall, they are doing a heck of a good job, at supporting one another. The union as well, in terms of RWDSU's case, hasn't packed up and say, on to the next hot shop. Right. Like they are making a real investment in time and resources to support these workers in their fight. And that's what the labor movement needs to do.
Right. And the Amazonians United, not only are they fighting, it's important to commend people for fighting and because that's a big step, right? But they're also winning. I saw on their Twitter they screen capped a pay stub or an announcement or something of that showed that workers at one delivery center got a $2 or $3 an hour raise as the result of a walkout or a series of walkouts that they, so they're winning, and they're winning. Like a $2 or $3 an hour raise is like significant, and they're doing that without being officially recognized. They're doing that without like bargaining for a contract. They just took an action with that as the demand, and they were met with that. I mean, that's impressive.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think they've been winning all along for a very, they won hazard pay, and they started, like, I mentioned earlier that someone may be dismissive of the microwave thing, right? But, Amazonians United, during like one sweltering summer in Chicago, they fought to get water. Like they marched on the boss because they didn't have cold water. So this is about showing each other that there is power when we come together. As I know it's a cliche line that we say in the labor movement, like when we fight, we win. When we stand together, we win. But it's true. Right. We literally do. And, solidarity is not something that is believed because it is said. It is something that must be experienced. So if you are on the line with a coworker and they're freaking dehydrated, and then you go to another coworker and they're dehydrated, you go and you talk together. What should we do about this? And you decide to march on the boss. That's a demonstration of solidarity and our collective power. And that's what we need to show each other more of, right? Like we live in a highly individualistic society where it's like, each person for themselves, but when we break through that by fighting for something, fighting for each other, we put a dent in that ideological grip. Or, I mean, put a dent, I'm mixing my metaphors there. But we loosen the grip on that ideological, hold.
I think that is so powerful there. Solidarity can't just be heard, it has to be felt. And the issues you're talking about, they are the things that affect people on a very visceral level. And it reminds me of a conversation I just had this week with a worker at Walmart who was upset that they had pulled the water away from their station. And this is the folks who go out and get the buggies in the parking lot, and they're in and out all day. And, they don't have a good reason why the water was pulled, but they know that they used to have it. And it's not provided anymore. It's not convenient for them anymore to have the water. They may have to purchase water from their employer. But that's something that, this guy really felt. It's his first job, a teenager, and he's already getting this real world education, unfortunately, about what happens when there is no counterbalance to the power of management.
Right.
When, arbitrary actions can be taken against you and your coworkers for no reason or for bad reasons or for any reason at all, and you don't have the ability yet to do something about that. And that's what's inspiring about these workers at Amazon, who I think are leading the way for so many folks in industries that aren't currently organized, that you can do something about it. That when you work together, you can change your lives.
And, to speak to the about just having water or having enough microwaves or having enough chairs to sit down, there have been like surveys of working folks that have shown that, as much as, wages and working conditions and things like that matter, one of the top things that is going to actually keep a worker at a place is if they feel like they are treated well. And if they're not treated well, even if they've got good wages or good benefits or what, there has been research showing that they're going to leave if they don't feel like they're being treated as a human being. And so this is something that managers are taught to try to keep unions out, like, oh, look, if you, that's why, the pizza parties are a meme because they're so commonly used, because like people like pizza, right? And you, to a certain extent, you can kind of pacify people with these small gestures of like, oh, look, I care about you, right? And on the other hand, workers can do the same thing. Workers can take advantage of all it takes to really, helping people get a small win, a small change that makes them feel better is going to make them feel better about the union. And workers can take advantage of that to build power for themselves instead of for the boss.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's about like meaningful, engagement, like I think, I agree with you that workers want to have a voice in their workplace. They also want to collaborate and work together, right? And sometimes management comes up with these schemes where they are in the room and they're the ones that are structuring like the collaboration. And what happens is that workers are collaborating with management on their own exploitation. Or workers, let's say I've written a couple of articles with my colleague Dan, who Jacob interviewed for when I was on my birthday celebrating. And, when you think about auto plants in Mexico, right, and workers here in the US, sometimes management comes up with these schemes that says, in order for US-based workers to be competitive with workers in Mexico, we must partner with the company. And that means that we're going to give up our 8-hour workday and work mandatory overtime. That means that we are going to give up our Sunday off, So it becomes like this low road like thinking of like let's drag down our standards to the level of where workers are at in Mexico or any other part of the world, instead of saying let's fight with our Mexican colleagues, our workers all over the world to lift the standards so that there's no safe haven for exploitation, right?
Bingo,
like that's not the thinking.
Huge. That is so huge. to work together across these lines so that there's no safe haven for exploitation. I think that says a lot.
Right. So yeah, so I mean, I think the same thing would be required for Amazon, right? Like I use the auto, but to stay on topic here about Amazon, Amazon is a multinational, corporation, and this is going to require international solidarity as well.
Right. Well, Louise, I really appreciate your time. That was a really good piece. Folks got to go check it out. There's a lot more in there that we didn't get to, a lot of quotes from workers. The title is 1 Year After the Failed Amazon Union Drive, Workers in Bessemer Are Voting a Second Time. You can find that on the Real News Network, therealnews.com. Really good place. Great article. Louise, thanks so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. So we've been talking to Luis Leon. He wrote that article for The Real News. It's really great. Check it out.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to plug Labor Notes, where Louise writes. Normally, they are having a training series in April. They do this pretty regular, but they have an online training series going through Secrets of a Successful Organizer. I know we've talked about that on the show before. I believe for like $15, you can get into all 3 sessions, but they're not going to turn anybody away, in my experience. Let's see if I have those dates here. It's coming up. April 4th is going to be the first one, and then the 11th and the 18th. They're all at 6:30 p.m. You can do it, from the convenience of your phone or computer. But if you'd like to get more in the nuts and bolts of how do you actually organize, how do you have organizing conversations with people, where do you get started, this would be a great outlet for you. So just wanted to plug that, especially seeing you and Louise both with your Troublemakers Union shirt on. If you want to learn how to be a certified troublemaker and do it effectively, this is a great training for you.
Yep, definitely. So the phone line is still open. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. You can give us a call about anything that we've been talking about on the show. Be happy to take your call. And here's a challenge. I was going to try to talk about this during the main show because I thought that maybe I would get somebody call in on this, but we didn't have enough time to talk about it. But the challenge is to call in and tell me a source of U.S. oil or other fossil fuel that Joe Biden has closed off. 844-899-8857. But you can't do it because it hasn't happened. Even though that would be the implication that you get, right? That everybody's saying that, it's Joe Biden's fault, that the gas prices are high, whatever.
Nobody can explain how or why.
Yeah.
And obviously, I know you're about to get to this, but I just want to say it right from the get-go. Neither one of us are like big Biden bros. There's no Joe Biden signs in our yards or anything like that. So,
yeah.
Before we even get deeper into that conversation, that's worth saying.
Yeah, so, gas prices are obviously they're rising, and it's hurting working people.
It sucks.
And it's hurting us, right? I mean, we're just like normal working folks. We don't get paid like crazy amounts of money for the show. We don't take any money, in fact, for the show to put in our pockets. And we've got jobs. We do this on our free time, right? This is kind of like a labor of love. And so gas prices rising not only hurt working people, but they disproportionately hurt working people. It's the same reason that sales and grocery taxes disproportionately hurt working people, because even though a working person and an oligarch may pay the same tax on, let's say, a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas, more of a working person's income is spent sustaining themselves than for an oligarch.
Right. If you've got $10 million in the bank, a few extra bucks every gas fill up really makes no difference in your life.
Right. And it is for that reason, that's why Republicans in this state, when they needed funding for infrastructure projects, instead of looking to the rich to pay for it, instead of maybe adding another tax bracket on our state's income tax over, $500,000 or something, maybe getting rid of the federal income tax deduction, which disproportionately benefits wealthy folks. Instead of looking to folks like that, Republicans passed a gas tax. Why did they do that? Because it's a regressive tax. It hurts working people more, and so because it hurts working people more, it hurts them less. It hurts the Republicans less. It hurts their donors less. And so that's why in this session, like I just mentioned, they are moving swiftly to pass a tax cut for the bosses. They are moving much more swiftly on that than they are to eliminate the grocery tax.
Which, by the way, that elimination of the grocery tax, that plan that we've been discussing, that Alabama Rise has been sharing, there was more polling came out last week showing a nearly 2/3 majority of the state would support that. So it's not like they would even be taking political risk at the ballot box by doing this. It's like you said, it's the donors and the wealthy, powerful interests that they actually represent.
Exactly. And so the sales taxes, the gas prices, the grocery taxes, these hurt working people far more than the folks that they care about. And the folks that they care about are the donor class. And gas prices hurt working folks even more when they rise so suddenly, because gas is an inelastic good, right? That means that I have and you have very little wiggle room on how much gas we can buy, right? I've got to get to work. You've got to get to work. I've got to go to the store. A lot of our travel has to take place regardless of the price of gas. So maybe we try to consolidate grocery trips. Maybe we don't go to the movies one weekend. Maybe we even try to carpool a couple times a week, right? But a lot of the short-term changes in our behavior are going to be nibbling at the edges. It's not going to save us that much money. Over the long term, maybe we move closer to work. Maybe we get an electric car. Maybe our city could invest in reliable and free or affordable public transportation. That would be an option. But we can't. Nice. Yeah, we can't do that in the 3 weeks that gas prices have risen 80 cents a gallon. Right? We can't do that in those 3 weeks. So rising gas prices, especially so suddenly, it really hurts working people. So it is concerning to us as working people, as people who have this project to advocate for the needs of working people. It's concerning to us. And if you've listened to the show, you know, obviously, we're not shy to criticize Democrats, but we have to know the real cause of the problem if we want to address it. And so because we are not shy about criticizing Democrats, that doesn't mean that criticizing Democrats is always going to be the answer, or that doesn't mean that the reason Democrats are being criticized is correct just because it's a criticism of Democrats, right? We have got to know the real cause of the problem before we can address it, because if we don't know the real cause, if we do not properly diagnose the problem, we're not going to have the right solutions. Right? If I think, for example, that, I don't know, if I think that the reason that I break out in hives every time I drink milk is because I am wearing Nike shoes, I'm going to start wearing Adidas and I'm still going to be breaking out in hives, right? Because I did not properly diagnose the problem. Okay? We have to properly diagnose the problem. And a lot of folks on talk radio want you to think that Joe Biden is solely responsible for this. And I think that maybe we could say that he is to a certain extent, but not for the reason that these people want you to think, okay? So what is it that has happened that people are saying has caused gas prices to increase? They're saying that he paused the Keystone XL pipeline and new drilling. But we're already getting the oil that the Keystone XL pipeline would bring us. The Keystone XL pipeline is a pipeline. It is not an oil field. The oil is coming to us either way. Either it comes to us through a pipeline or it comes to us on trucks and trains. It's coming to us already, the oil that we would be getting. Okay? So we would not be getting more oil if this pipeline was finished. And the pipeline wouldn't even be finished for another several years, so it still would not address the problem.
Right. All of this, they're talking about long-term because,
right.
Everyone wants to drill now. There's a lot of talk about, well, we need more drilling. When is that going to affect gas prices? Because it won't be now. It won't be the next few weeks or even in the next few months. They're talking about things that will have no impact on the current spike in gas prices.
Yeah. And they're also saying that that pausing new drilling is increasing the gas prices. But that's new drilling.
Right.
He didn't stop any drilling that was already happening. Any drilling that was already happening is still happening or can still happen. And not only was the pause only on new drilling, the pause on new drilling was struck down. So there isn't that pause anymore that they're pointing to. It doesn't exist. On top of that, they have like a lot of permits. Gas companies, oil companies have something like 9,000 permits on different across the country that they can utilize. And now for the same reason that new drilling isn't going to have an effect on that issuing new permits wouldn't have an effect on gas prices right now. These permits, it takes time to actually begin the process of drilling, but they are not even beginning that process because there's an incentive for them not to drill because it increases their stock prices. It increases their stock prices not to drill because you've got this potential, and because the more people pay for gas, the more money that they make.
Right, and that's what no one has fully explained in conversations I've heard or any of the media coverage I've heard is how is anything you're doing going to convince the fossil fuel industries that they should have less profits?
Right.
Because that is the essential question there.
That's what you've got to do. If you want them to drill more, you have to convince them that they need that less profits is going to be good for them. And so the reason that gas prices are actually high, and it's kind of funny because all these people that are telling you that pausing the Keystone XL pipeline and pausing new drilling, all the people that are telling you this is the reason that gas prices are so high, they are also the type of folks that when it doesn't apply, they love to trot out like, oh, Econ 101, supply and demand. You liberals don't understand. You leftists don't understand. All you got to do is understand Econ 101. Even though, like, in most places in our economy, an Econ 101 understanding of the economy is not going to be sufficient to, like,
Econ 101 is mostly cheerleading for free market ideology. Is not necessarily attached to reality.
But in Econ 101, Econ 101 and supply and demand is really, really sufficient, broadly speaking, to understand what's going on with the gas prices. COVID killed demand when it happened. That's why gas prices went crazy low. We were seeing like $1.40 gallons of gas, $1.40 for a gallon of gas in Alabama, because no one was driving. Right? No one was driving anywhere. No one was taking vacations. No one was flying across the country. So gas prices plummeted. And so, because gas prices plummeted, oil companies decreased supply. OPEC, the oil producing companies in the world, decreased supply. They decreased production. And production has not increased to the level that it was pre-pandemic anywhere, including in the U.S. U.S. oil companies are not producing as much oil as they did before the pandemic. It's almost there. I think the peak was 11.3 million barrels of oil every day in the U.S. And the peak was like 12.3 million barrels of oil per day in the U.S. And now we're at 11.3, I think. So it's getting there, but it's not there yet.
And as you mentioned earlier, they do have some incentive to restrict the supply.
Right.
Because the more supply, that waters down the prices that ultimately can be charged.
Right.
So they have this incentive to keep, the supply fairly low or at least artificially restricted to maintain their prices. And something that's happened just in the last couple of weeks is that the oil has decreased in price, but the gas prices really haven't. And so that's another factor that we see just as normal working people, is that, we can tune in to CNBC and Marketplace on NPR and hear how oil is by the barrel is falling, but that's not being reflected in our gas prices. Certainly not yet.
Yes, exactly. That's the other thing, is that even as the prices of barrels of oil is decreasing, prices of gas have not decreased yet. And so that's another issue.
I mean, and that speaks to the broader issues of monopoly power in this country, because like you mentioned, gas is one of those things that we're beholden to. We cannot survive without it, for better or worse, mostly worse. We can't survive without it. We require it. And so they've got us over the barrel.
Right. And so the solutions, I think on the short term, there's not a whole lot that can be done, but I do think that there's some merit to a short-term suspension of a lot of gas taxes. I think that there's some merit to that, and I think that we could make up that revenue by either increasing the debt or taking it from rich people, increasing taxes somewhere else on rich people to make up for that lost revenue. I think that there's a lot of merit to that. I think that there's a lot of merit to that idea, and we've seen states across the country doing that.
Yeah, I think when right-wingers talk about that, they mostly would be doing no replacement of the revenue. And so you would just see like public transportation budgets gutted and infrastructure projects gutted.
So we have to have these infrastructure projects. We have to have these public transportations, and so there would need to be a way to replace the revenue in the long term. But I do think as a short-term solution, there is merit to a short-term limited suspension of gas taxes. I think that is, and that's basically the only thing that the government can do at this point that is going to have a short-term effect. I think that's the only thing that they can do, and I think that there's merit to that, and I think that we should be looking at doing that. I think that we should do that. Long-term solutions, instead of drilling more oil, what we should be doing is, one, we should be nationalizing these companies. Because all of these people are talking about how this is a national security issue, that gas prices are so high, that we import oil from some countries. So we should just nationalize. Like, we should not. The oil is too important to American life to leave in the hands of oligarchs.
Yeah.
It's just too important. And so we shouldn't allow these people who have no accountability, these people who have the ability to keep gas prices high as the price of oil per barrel decreases. They have that power. They just shouldn't have that power. We should take that power away from them. We should take it away from them. We should nationalize all energy companies in the United States and bring them under public control.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's like obvious solution right there. I think that investment in nuclear power also has a lot of merit. Fred Stafford, Matt Huber, and Lee something. They've written a lot about nuclear power and how there are ways to make it safe, and there are ways to do it under government control, under public control, with good union wages. I think that because of the unreliability of wind and solar at this point, and the need to have batteries with them, I just don't think that they're reliable enough to have like base load. I have been convinced basically that we need nuclear power at least in the medium term, and so I think that that's something that we should be doing, and we should be investing in green jobs. We should be investing in solar fields. We should be investing in wind farms, and we should be making sure that all of these are project labor agreements. We talked to Eddie about that earlier. We should be making sure that all of these are tied to good wages, to good, safe working conditions, that there is a neutrality agreement with the contractors saying that you cannot interfere with your workers' right to self-organization. And I think that in the long term, if you implement all of these policies, we're going to be paying less for gas, but also we're going to have more options
and less
other
need
than
for
gas.
Yeah.
And less need for gas, right.
And that is important, and I think it's something that, I feel the need to say, which is we are literally in an existential crisis as the human species and most other living things on this planet are on a path to destruction. That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
That human civilization and the broader ecosystem is being destroyed primarily by the fossil fuel industry and our dependence on the fossil fuel industry. So the fact that, we have this skyrocketing gas price right now, yes, it's hurting all of us and it sucks. But I think the worst thing we could do is use this as an opportunity to do even more drilling and even more destruction of our planet and take even more years off the lifespan of our civilization. Because ultimately, that's what they're talking about doing. They're not going to phrase it that way, of course. And, I know that climate change is often pointed to as like a job killer and that sort of thing, but
doesn't have to be.
Climate change, it threatens the future that all of us have, and it threatens the very foundations of an economy. And you combine that with an American empire that's in decline and all the increased tensions geopolitically that come with that, the massive amount of refugee crises that we're going to see increasing, the number of extreme weather events that are going to be even more common, and the disruption and destabilization that comes with all of that. The last thing we need is more dependence on these oligarchs, whether they be American oligarchs or Saudi oligarchs or Russian oligarchs. That's the last thing we need, is more dependence on them to have a functioning economy, especially when it does so at the very expense of our future, poisoning our offspring.
Right. Oh, and also, I skipped over this in my bullet list, but obviously the Russia thing is like, that's the primary driver of gas prices in the last month or so, obviously. But
some of that's real
that.
impacts on supply, and some of that is
imagined impacts on future supply.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that it doesn't take long of following the stock market to see how wildly prices can vary based on people's feelings.
Right.
The Fed coughs in a certain direction, and that impacts stock prices.
Yeah.
But that's the problem when so much of our economy, quote unquote, is really just speculation. Because these oligarchs are not taxed, as you've described, they have massive amounts of wealth that can be used just to speculate. And that's why, we have these bizarre things like NFTs, and we have stock prices that do not reflect at all the values or even profit margins of companies. It's all a big shell game.
Yeah,
and we're the ones paying for it.
Yep. Thanks for staying with us, everybody that's still on the listening to us on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're still hanging out with us, make sure you like the stream. Make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you are following us on Facebook. You can visit our website, TVLR.fm, if you would like to get our new hat or become a sustaining member of the program. And I think there was something else that I wanted to say there, but I forgot about it. So one of the stories that we've been tracking recently has been the anti-protest bill, which would dramatically increase the authority that cops have to destroy the lives of working people who are protesting their boss and the government. And we think that's bad. Hot take, that's bad. That's what we think. And one of the retorts to this is that Don't you trust the cops? Like, I back the blue. Why don't you? The cops would never do anything bad. Like, don't hurt their feelings. And of course, we don't trust the cops to have any more authority than the insane amount that they already have, because we live in the real world. We live in the real world, and in the real world, we are continuously validated in our apprehension about giving the armed enforcers of the state even more power. In just the last, and just recently, within spitting distance, we're just continually validated. Last week, a cop in Scottsboro shot his wife and then killed himself. She is in critical condition. Last week, a Huntsville school security officer made sexual contact with a student, and of course, this isn't as strong as some of the others. It's still an allegation, and he's just a security guard without police authority, apparently. But, there's a similar mentality there. Just a couple months ago, a Huntsville cop killed his wife. 3 years ago, a reporter for BuzzFeed wrote about a rape case in Tuscaloosa that the cops did not pursue, and they sued her for defamation. Last week, a court found her account was true in protected speech. Last year, a Huntsville cop was convicted of murder, and to this day, the chief of police, the city's mayor, the Fraternal Order of Police, which is the country's largest police organization, defend the convicted murderer cop. To this day, all these people defend a convicted murderer. These are all, of course, anecdotes, but all of these are anecdotes within literal spitting distance of where we are broadcasting from. But maybe, let's say you don't like anecdotes. We can also point to the fact that in Huntsville, black folks are 11 times more likely to be arrested for weed than white folks. We can point to multiple studies that have found that cops self-report a domestic abuse rate of about 40%. That's self-reporting.
Wow.
That's self-reporting. These are cops that are saying, like, yeah, I beat up my lady. Like, holy crap. The better question is, why the hell would I trust these people as a group with more power when they clearly cannot behave responsibly with the power that we give them? That's the better question. And I don't understand why people don't ask themselves that question instead of, why don't I trust cops more? Why don't I? Because we live in the real world. Because we see the things that happen around us. We can see research that shows that cops disproportionately attack and discriminate against working people, poor people, minorities, marginalized communities. We can see it is totally evident. We can see the studies that show that that black folks are pulled over for speeding more often in the daylight than white folks, but at nighttime, the disparity disappears. At nighttime, the disparity disappears. So either black folks, for some reason, just drive crazy during the day and then they calm down at night, or cops are behaving in a discriminate way. Those are the two explanations there, and I think one of them is obviously more likely than the other. I mean, there's just so much evidence that we can point to. There are so many reasons not only not to give cops more power, but to take away some of the power that they do have, and even for their own good, right? Even for their own good, because we ask police to do too much.
Yeah. Instead of a mental health system and a drug treatment system and a public housing system, we're provided police officers.
Right.
And that doesn't do any of us any good, including the officers themselves. But yeah, it's you can look at the current statistics, you can look at current anecdotes, you can look at the broad history of this country and how policing has its roots in slave patrols. You can see how policing had its roots in the militias, the white militias that were created to go and exterminate Native peoples. We can see how union busting has always incorporated law enforcement.
I mean, right here in Alabama, right now, state troopers are giving literal emergency escorts to scabs, to out-of-state scabs, so that they can come in and steal Alabama workers' jobs and try to break the union and try to put more profits in the pockets of New York hedge fund managers. That's what Alabama cops are doing right now to Alabama coal miners and to the community in Brookwood. Why would I give these people more power?
Yeah, I think law and order is not some neutral state. Law and order is not neutral, and neither are the folks who enforce the law and order. There is a clear power dynamic here in terms of who the laws are for, who the laws are written on behalf of and written to punish, and how those laws are actually enforced on the day-to-day basis. And I think that's also an important thing that folks could really use is like the theoretical background here on what is the role of the police in our society. Because we're trained from a very, very young age, from Paw Patrol age, to think that the police are here to keep us safe, to protect our rights. But that's not the role. That's not what they do. To the extent that happens, that's kind of a side effect. That's not their main purpose. Their main purpose is here to exist. To maintain property as it exists, and to maintain law and order, which is essentially the status quo of our social economic system as it exists. That's what they're here for. They're not here to keep people safe in your neighborhood. And I know that there are individuals who join the police force because they want to do that kind of thing. They want to keep people safe. They want to be, the good cop. And I can appreciate folks who want to work within the system to make things better, or who joined, perhaps naively with this idea of bettering their community. But it's not. It goes beyond even just those individuals to a systemic issue there, and it's a systemic setup of how the police are designed to operate. I mean, we just found out in the last few days that American police have so many extra weapons. They're sending weapons to Ukraine. Our police force is so militarized. They have equipment that can be sent to a hot war in Europe. That is just wild, and I think what folks who have the back to blue mentality either don't appreciate or don't want to know, or perhaps because they benefit from the way things are now, is that the police are used very similarly to an occupying force. In so many of our neighborhoods, particularly black and brown and poor neighborhoods, the police are used in a way that would look fairly familiar to folks in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past 20 years, in the ways in which they occupy the neighborhoods and the ways in which they are upholding power.
Yep.
So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox, but I'm glad you brought it up. And it's the other thing I wanted to address while we're on this topic is the idea of cops as workers. It's my opinion, and there are people who are much smarter than me and much better read than me who would agree with me that cops are not workers, not in the sense that we understand it. Yes, they may sell their time and labor in exchange for a wage or a salary, but they occupy a very different role in our society and our economy, and they are not the same as even firefighters and teachers and other public sector workers. They are the guard labor. They are the guard dogs of capital. And I think that's how we have to look at them. And so I don't consider police unions to be unions. Consider them to be protection rackets for the armed enforcers of the state. I do not see them as my brothers and sisters in the labor movement. They're my human brothers and sisters, and I wish no harm upon them. But they do not operate in our economy and our society as working class people in the way the vast majority of us do. It's just a different role. And you can lump in, ICE agents and and those types in there with them. And the scary thing is they make up a huge part of the reactionary base in this country.
Right.
The far right is very popular amongst law enforcement, both cops and border patrol agents, ICE agents, those types. The far right utilizes those folks. They're militarized. They're armed and trained. They have a militaristic personality, and cultural basis. And so they're scary.
Yeah.
In fact, on the way here to the studio this morning, I saw one state trooper pull over 2 different people and saw multiple HPD flying by with sirens. And I'm not going to lie, it made me scared. It set me in a paranoid mood for the rest of the day. It kind of rattled my nerves a little bit. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't even speeding or anything like that, but it was just enough to affect my psyche. And I can only imagine what it would be like for, a black trans woman, driving down the same road at the same time, and what kind of psychic effect that would have.
Right. In a little bit better news, the NLRB has issued a complaint against Starbucks in the case of 3 baristas, alleging that the company is engaging in illegal anti-union activity, specifically interfering with, restraining, and coercing employees. The cases are Layla. She is a 19-year-old barista that management continues to harass with write-ups that are not consistent with prior record of enforcement. The company also illegally punished a union supporter by writing her up for a previously tolerated medical absence and ultimately suspended her. Starbucks forced out another pro-union employee by denying scheduling availability requests. And finally, Tyler is a 21-year-old barista with autism who had accommodation requests that were initially granted and then were taken away when the company found out that he supported the union. I mean, this is just disgusting. There's a thread that Jordan Zacharin has on Twitter that I would recommend y'all read. And this is some of it. Last year, Tyler was diagnosed with autism, and part of their autism is sensory, so the headphones and the apron that Starbucks workers are required to wear trigger meltdowns. And for a year, Tyler asked for minor accommodations, maybe less time with a headset or a shirt instead of an apron, and Starbucks management ignored the request for much of the time. The sensory meltdowns got worse, and finally, Starbucks management agreed to make some accommodations. Then it became clear that Tyler supported the new unionizing effort in the store, and suddenly Starbucks management informed Tyler that they couldn't make those simple accommodations. They would need a bunch of doctor's notes, which Tyler could not afford to get. It's insane. He's a 21-year-old who lives far from his family. He can't afford to get this professional evaluation that Starbucks is requiring to make these accommodations. They offered to work behind the scenes so the apron wasn't an issue, but Starbucks said no. In order to afford to get medical care, Tyler has to work, but Starbucks won't let them work until they get the care. It's a doctor's note. The accommodations aren't actually an issue. Starbucks can make them, and of course, but they're not making them because Tyler supports the union campaign. If the NLRB wins the case, Starbucks will have to offer to rehire the fired workers and reimburse them for lost wages and post a notice of their misconduct with a promise not to do it again. The hearing is scheduled for June, which is welcome news, but it's not good enough, and it's not quick enough. This is quick. And it's looking to maybe be resolved 3 months from now. 3 months from now. Now, Starbucks Workers United has been making GoFundMes for workers that are that have their hours cut back and that have been fired. So I'm sure they've got something. But for workers that don't have that kind of support, 3 months without work, even if you know that you'll ultimately get your lost wages back, 3 months without work is going to be devastating. And so this is not happening quick enough. And as always, workers cannot rely on the law to save us. We've got to do it ourselves. In the time that it takes this complaint to run its course, we will likely see 100 new Starbucks, 100 new campaigns announced at 100 different Starbucks locations. And that is what is going to protect workers at Starbucks. It's not going to be this individual case. It's going to be workers coming together to organize collectively and protect each other. It's not going to be the boss. It's not going to be the law. It's going to be us.
Absolutely.
Speaking of insufficient but welcome remedies, you remember OVEC, the Ohio Valley Environmental Coalition? They won their NLRB case. So from the tweet that the OVEC Union sent out on Friday, March 11th, Judge Borges released his ruling on the OVEC Union's several ULPs against OVEC. In his ruling, the judge found that OVEC violated members' rights under the NLRA by suspending, terminating, and intimidating members during the course of the union drive. OVEC is now obligated to provide back pay to Brendan and Dustin, who they fired, and expunge from their records any reference to disciplinary actions taken against members. So that's great.
Love to see it.
Yeah. But they were fired like almost a year ago.
Yeah, and it is very tough. As important as it is to have the union protections and to have a union who can go to bat for you when you are illegally fired or suspended or otherwise, mistreated on the job, it is a very lengthy process. It's not fun, and it's not quick. It's not what it should be. And so I think we're all thankful, those of us who've had unions, to have our back, who've been in this situation, but it is by no means how it should work. So I'm glad to see them get this ruling. But yeah, I hate that it took so long, and it should have never happened in the first place.
Oh, of course
which
not.
which is why the workers won.
Right. Yeah, and just for a reminder, we've got interviews with Brendan.
Yeah.
On you can go back and watch those to learn more about the campaign and the specifics about it and how he was fired and stuff like that.
There's a lot of lessons to take there in terms of organizing in the nonprofit space,
right?
Which is an area where we need to see more unions, and hopefully we will. It seems like we're I don't have the data to prove this, but it looked like, at least the last couple of years, we've had a real growth in organizing at these nonprofit organizations. And so I hope that's a trend that really continues, and I hope that this win for OVEC is kind of a win behind the sales of more organizing in the nonprofit areas.
Definitely. Like you said, there's been a lot. The SPLC recently unionized. They are located here in Alabama. We want to talk to them sometime about the stuff that they've got going on there, because that is pretty cool. But yeah, every worker deserves a union. Definitely, and even if you do work that benefits people. And, these folks, they want to, people at the management at OVEC, they were like, oh, you're going to hurt our partners, you're going to hurt our customers, you're going to hurt the people who need us, right? The people who need you to be safe. They need you to be well compensated. They need you to be in the right frame of mind so that you can do your job well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, you should unionize if you work at a nonprofit. So, last week was Equal Pay Day, and that's a day to remind folks that, women still don't make as much as men in the workforce, and hopefully a day to kind of spurn us to action on that issue. We know that women earn 22.1% less than men on average, and of course there are lots of factors there, and people will be like, oh, that doesn't actually mean what you think it means. There's not actually really a wage gap. But if you account for literally everything, like number of hours worked, education, what industry, all these types of things, if you account for all of that, then you're still left with a 4 to 6% differential in wage, which is significant, and that's necessarily a result of discrimination because everything else has been accounted for. So what else is there? But should we actually account for everything? One of the reasons that the wage gap is as large as it is because women, the industries that women dominate, are valued less.
Right, like teachers and nurses.
The Department of Labor found that 10% of the gender wage gap is caused by the devaluation of women-dominated jobs. And of course that makes sense, right? Like we know that teachers, for some reason, people who are going to mold the minds of the next generation, for some reason, those people are not compensated as well as the person who like writes a program for Raytheon.
Yeah. That's exactly what was in my mind. I'm thinking about all the men who work in these STEM-heavy jobs in the military-industrial complex who have similar education credentials as teachers and nurses, but who are making dramatically more for work that is, in my opinion, dramatically less important to the human race.
Even in some cases, like, actively detrimental. Like, if you are... Yeah. As an American, which is not to say that you're like a bad person, it's just saying that
that you get paid in blood money. I mean,
yeah, it's just to say that your life's work makes the world worse. You know, I mean, if you're like literally, if your life's work is like making missiles or nuclear weapons and things like this for the U.S. military. Like, you know, there's a certain amount of defense that is legitimate and that we need as a country, but our defense budget is more than the next, like, 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 countries combined, okay? So most of what we do now is not necessary and is actively harmful and could be used on more socially valuable labor. So that all that is to say, I think if you ask anybody, are teachers and nurses more valuable to society than programmers for Raytheon? I think most people intuitively understand that teaching is more important to a society than that. I think most people do. But the way that we compensate people are not it does not reflect that. And now maybe people will say, well, that's because nursing and teaching, that's all government stuff, and whereas people who work for Raytheon are in the private sector where competition and all these things make wages go up. And that's BS, because all of Raytheon's money, all of any defense contractor's money comes from the taxpayer. It's exactly the same as the remuneration mechanism of the mechanism for pay for teachers, except there's a middleman. Except in the case of Raytheon, there's this millionaire, billionaire person at the top who's scraping off tons of money for himself. And it's almost always himself, right? So that's the only difference, is that in this case, you've got this middleman who's taking away all this money. And in the case of teachers, you don't have that middleman. And so it's totally absurd. And so that is, so really we shouldn't be so focused on controlling for the different industries, because women-dominated industries are devalued because women do them. Even in programming, like programming was at first a female-dominated industry. If you'll go and like read the history of programming, when it first started, women were more likely to do it because women were more likely to be secretaries, and so that kind of fell under like a secretary type role. And then as it became more important to certain corporations, men began to do it, and as men went into the field, compensation increased because it was valued more because men were doing it. And so we should fight against this. We should be having a higher minimum wage. We should have more protections for mothers. We should have universal health care. All of these things are going to increase.
Paid maternity leave.
Yeah, paid maternity leave. All of these things are going to decrease the wage gap. And we should also be protecting the right to organize, because unions fight the wage gap by increasing women's wages and men's wages, but also bringing them more in line with men's wages, right? We properly assess the value of women in the workplace.
And unions can actually enforce the protections that are there, that are supposed to protect you from sexism and gender discrimination in the workplace. It's unions who can fight that fight.
Exactly. And one of the most evident cases of that was what happened with teachers in Wisconsin after Act 10. There have been multiple studies about what happened 10 years after Act 10. There was a study that came out last year about this that we talked about on the show that showed that 10 years after Act 10, the average teacher salary, men and women, the average teacher salary decreased by $10,000 a year. $10,000 a year. On top of that, there was a gender pay gap that was created. There wasn't one before. Male and female teachers in Wisconsin made the same money. They got paid the same money for the same work. 10 years after Act 10, not only was the average wage decreased by $10,000 annually, there appeared a wage gap of 11% among female teachers. That is insane. That is absolutely crazy.
But hey, they accomplished part of their mission in doing so.
Yep, that's...
and I think... as we kind of wrap this up, I wanted to extend solidarity to all of the educators who are on strike right now in Minneapolis. So that's a woman-dominated industry, and we've seen nurses and nursing home workers really as leaders in the labor movement over the past couple of years. We've seen the flight attendants, another heavily female profession that has done a great job organizing and has been really instrumental, especially at the early days of the pandemic. They were instrumental in securing some wins for their members throughout all the COVID aid packages. So we've got teachers and other educators on strike in Minneapolis. They've been on strike for over a week now. Definitely sending our love and some solidarity to those women and men who are there fighting the good fight. And of course, all of our brothers and sisters in Brookwood and all other workers who are currently on strike right now.
Yep, absolutely. So that's going to be it for today's episode of the Valley Labor Report. We appreciate your time. If you would like to help us stay on the air, you can buy our new hat. You can make a one-time or recurring donation on TVLR.fm. Share and follow the pages on social media. Give us a rating if you're listening to us as a podcast. Those help, apparently. I don't know. Give us 5 stars.
Yeah.
If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, share your thoughts about the contents of today's episode, share a bad boss story, share an organizing win, or ask us a question, the number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we will see you next week.